Hang on, Gray, I'm just warning you. I'm about to touch my microphone. I finished touching the microphone. No, I haven't. I'm going to touch it some more. I don't think I've told you this, but I mean, as you know, when I look out my office window, I can see out to the Bristol Channel. And I quite often see ships going by. But I recently found out there's a website that is a bit like those flight tracking websites where you can follow planes, except for ships.
Ooh.
So now whenever I see a ship, I call up this website and I can look at what it is and what it's called and where it's from and stuff like that. It's really cool.
Oh, that is very cool.
It is
That is
cool.
very cool.
It is
I have
good.
to say, I am way more interested in that than planes. I am obsessed with cargo containers. I love cargo containers. And the idea of a gigantic ship that is filled with cargo containers is extremely interesting to me. So I would be very interested in seeing the live ship tracking website in a way that I would be not so interested in seeing a live aircraft tracking website, even though they're almost the exact same thing.
If I could arrange for us to do like a trip on a cargo ship across the Atlantic, would you do it?
Oh, that's interesting.
We could do the podcast from a container ship.
They take a long time, though. They take a long time, don't they, to get across the Atlantic?
They do. I know a guy that does it. He's a scientist at, I think, the University of Derby, and he's quite environmentally conscious and doesn't like to fly. And whenever he has to go to conferences in America, he goes on container ships.
That is way worse environmentally than flying on an aircraft. Those enormous container ships put out ungodly amounts of carbon dioxide. That's not being environmentally conscious.
But they're doing it anyway. It's not like he's creating demand for them.
Yes, but the plane is flying anyway. This is the kind of environmental stuff that drives me crazy. You're like, oh, I'm going to help the environment by doing a thing that sounds better but is actually worse. I hate that kind of stuff. I hate that stuff. Like, what's his alternative here? Everybody starts taking cargo ships. If everybody does what he does, then the demand for cargo ships goes up, and we're in a much worse situation. That is just, I hate that stuff. Sorry.
The University of Nottingham chemistry department, who is obviously much loved to me and close to my heart, are building this carbon neutral lab, which is a big deal. And it's like the world-class environmentally friendly building. It's made from wood and things like that. And it was nearly finished. They'd nearly finished building it about a year ago. And there was a fire at the site and the whole thing burned down. And they're having to do it again. And the amount of grief they're getting there, you know, people jokingly saying, oh, carbon neutral, hey? You just burnt the whole stack of wood. And it's all gone up into, all the carbon's gone straight back up into the sky. But
at least that's accidental. That's not on purpose. Sometimes I find some of the environmental stuff is the equivalent of intentionally burning down a carbon neutral building. Traveling on the cargo ship is the equivalent of that to me.
I don't know. I haven't thought through the implications of what you say about the cargo ship yet. And quite often I just accept what you're saying, and I don't know. I'm sure people will let us know.
Yes, we'll hear about it. I may be wrong, but my impression is that there are far fewer cargo ships than you think there are, but that they have an enormous carbon footprint.
I thought it wasn't the carbon; it's other chemicals that they release that are bad, and their carbon emissions aren't catastrophic. It's the other poisons. But I don't know. People will let us know. People are smarter than us.
The internet will know vastly more about this topic than we do. Just was wildly speculating and getting off topic before we have even begun.
Yes, well, this is a great tradition. Now, I'm just going to deal with some personal news because people seem very sensitive to our voices and our emotions and our moods. So people might think I sound flat or terrible or something today. There has been a bereavement in my family this week. My father-in-law, who was very, very much loved by all of us, including me, died this week. As you know, you've been really understanding, and we've had to reschedule the podcast and all sorts of things like that. And it's a terrible loss for the family. I won't talk too much about him on the podcast because, frankly, he was just a real down-to-earth man, and I think he was bemused by things like my job and YouTube and podcasts. He was a proper man's man. But he did like my work because it provides for his daughter. So anyway, rest in peace to Dave, who I really, really loved. And I'll tell you what, the final week or so with him also taught me what fabulous people the people who work in hospices are. And and people who follow me on Twitter and things like that are probably going to see me raising a bit of money for hospices over the next few weeks. So you'll understand why. So that said, there was I did find out something interesting as a result later in the week, because we went along to handle some things to do with the death certificate. Obviously, there's paperwork and things like that when people pass away. So I went to this registrar's office, and I found out two really interesting things about death certificates that I didn't know. One is that all the registrars around the country that do all the births, deaths, and marriages have special ink that is supplied only to them. You and I can't go and buy this ink from the shops, but it's the special ink they use that you then stick the fountain pen in and do all the signing with, presumably for sort of forensic reasons, so they can say, yes, this was registrar's ink that it was signed with and not just a pen from Staples. I thought that was interesting.
It's a security feature?
Yes, yeah. I believe so. But the other thing that was interesting was when we were having the certificate printed out, the registrar said, how many certificates would you like? Because, you need a number for dealing with all the different banks and things like that. So we said, and I don't know, I think we said we said 10, I think, which was a bit higher than normal, but we thought, oh, well, we may as well get a bunch. So she pulled out the sort of the watermarked paper from a drawer in her desk and just put them in the printer, like in the printer tray, and outprinted the certificates onto this special paper, which she then signed with her special ink. And I was looking at the paper, which she just had a ream of sitting there. And I don't know, I made some comment. She could tell I was interested in all these things. And she told me that these bits of paper that they print death certificates on and birth certificates and things like that is also highly secure. And a blank piece of that paper, a blank A4 piece of paper that UK death certificates and birth certificates are printed on will sell for £500 on the black market. A blank piece of paper.
They use the same paper for the birth certificates and the death certificates?
That's recently they have changed to that, I believe. It used to be different, but now I think they use the same. Isn't that amazing?
Life beginning and ending on a piece of paper.
Yeah, well, that's a whole other thing. But there is a funny sort of paperwork feeling to these things, isn't there? She was telling me that one time from her offices, a safe got stolen. They used to have a small safe that burglars were able to pick up, and the safe got taken to a local park, and somehow they opened it. And they took out all the petty cash, and then the police called and said, do you want to come and get your safe back? And they went and got their safe, and it still had reams and reams of this paper worth £500 a sheet left in it.
That's a case of the thieves not knowing what they have.
Exactly. Those druggies, man, they've got a lot to learn about the value of a piece of paper.
Yeah, they must have had egg on their face when they heard about that.
I know. Anyway, £500 for a piece of paper. That's amazing.
It's the value of something like a birth or death certificate on the black market.
Yes.
Presumably you were trying to create fictional people with birth certificates. I imagine they're probably using it for birth certificates more than death certificates.
Yeah, and to do things to do with citizenship, I would imagine, and things like getting to live in countries you're not supposed to live in.
Yeah, that's what they want the paper for.
Yeah. Anyway,
Shawshank Redemption.
There you go. Interesting.
Yeah.
So also as a result of sort of events in my family this week, I haven't sort of been exercising, and I've been eating out a lot and doing a lot of that sort of thing. So I have abandoned my diet for the last week and a half. I'm back on it now, Gray. I've been calorie counting since yesterday again, but I did give myself some time off. So
I think that's more than fair.
Thank you. So I also have not weighed myself because I dare not look. But also I can't find my scales at the moment because our house is being majorly redecorated at the moment, and I'm having to fill up rooms with things here, there, and everywhere. And my scales are hidden away in an office somewhere, probably under a pile of books. So I am forfeiting my point to you. We shared the points at our first weigh-in, and I'm just going to have to forfeit a point. I mean, we could not do a weigh-in, but I don't think that would be fair either because you'll have a massive advantage next time. And so I'd rather just forfeit the point. And
so here's what I think we should do.
Okay.
I think in special circumstances, this week the point doesn't count, but I'm going to start from this point, right? Because yes, if we weigh ourselves in a month, you are like a week and a half behind, right? If you see what I'm saying. So while I have a victory this week in terms of weight loss, I don't want this to actually go on the chart of who's winning more points than other points.
Okay, well, I don't agree. I feel like it would make it more glorious if I can come back from adversity and.
Okay, if you are able to come back from adversity and win anyway, then we can give me this 1 point.
All right.
Right? If I win by 1 point, I don't want that situation.
Okay. Oh, see, this is good. I like this. It's a win-win for me because I can do the epic come from behind victory. But
That's
if I
exactly
don't,
right.
It doesn't matter.
I thought you might agree to this scenario in which it's all upside for Brady and downside for me.
You're being too generous, but anyway. Yes. How did you do?
I was really determined this week.
Yeah.
Of making sure that I beat you, and I was thinking, oh man, all right, I'm not gonna let Brady win. I'm all in on this, and I've been very good with what I'm eating. And in the way of these things, I lost less weight than the first time round, which I didn't think I was being very good at all. So I am down 2 pounds, which is 0.9 kilograms.
Oh, for goodness sake, great. I'm going to go and weigh myself. I might get the point anyway. Hang on a sec, man. I'm going to go and find the scales under those books and find out, just in case. Hang on. I'm doing it.
Are you really? He's actually gone away now, and I'm just sitting at home, listening to the sounds of Brady pushing around books or boxes or other things. I hope you're doing all right, internet. Listening to just me rambling on while I wait for Brady. I hope he gets the point. I genuinely do. Oh, I hear the sounds of a returning Brady. I hear him giggling in the background.
Do you know what's funny?
Hello. Yes.
I actually just took like all my clothes off for the way in. I ripped my jeans off and my t-shirt off so that I'd be as light as possible. Which means I'm now sitting here in my boxer shorts. Hang on, I'm just going to check what my previous weight was.
You need a spreadsheet. I had to make a spreadsheet for this because I knew I wasn't going to keep track of
my
this.
My app does it, so hang on.
This will be so glorious if you win anyway.
No, I only lost 0.2 of a kilogram. What did you lose? 0.3.
I lost 0.9.
Oh, okay. I only lost 0.2. So you do win. You can have your fake point for now. And I'm now sitting here in my boxer shorts. Hang on, I'm going to put a t-shirt on because I feel a bit exposed. Hang on.
You know what? Yeah, I would feel really uncomfortable if we did the rest of the podcast with you just in your boxer shorts.
I'm going to do it. I'm not putting my jeans back on, but I'm going to put a t-shirt on. Hang on.
Yeah, at least put a shirt on.
All right.
I don't know. It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't make any difference to the practicalities of it, but it would just feel weird to know that you're sitting there in your boxers.
Hang on. Let me get dressed. Hang on.
Oh, this is a good start to the show.
All right, I'm decent.
You know what? Even if you weren't, I'm just glad to know that you are. Just, I hear those words, and now I feel like I can relax.
I'm really pleased that I've even lost weight at all. So that's a real victory for me. That's really encouraging. So
my opinion on this stuff is the absolute values don't really matter.
No.
What matters is the trend line.
Of course.
That's the thing with this stuff. And so I figure anything that's a loss number, even if it's a tiny loss number, that's still totally a win in terms of health.
And we have seen all the messages from people telling us all the things we're doing wrong and what matters and doesn't matter. But to me, it's not even about that. It's about seeing numbers that motivate you. And even if the numbers are a sham and don't mean anything, if they motivate me to stay healthy for another week, they're doing something for me. So yeah. So after that unusual interlude, there's been also I've been really busy in the show notes. Like I've pasted lots of little things in here, but they're all very bitty. So I'm just going to go through them in a bitty kind of way.
Yeah, we have a bunch of little things to go through. So I think this show is probably going to be follow-up heavy, but it has a lot of little topics. So let's start going through some stuff. So the first thing I see here is that someone found some of the dead whale footage you were mentioning from last episode or 2 episodes ago.
Well, it was kind of me because remember we talked about the dead whale near Adelaide and all the sharks eating it and the tourists being stupid. And I vividly remember seeing it on TV. And I still have a lot of friends who work in television in Adelaide. So I called one of them up. Thank you to my friends at 10 Eyewitness News. And if you're in South Australia or even in Australia, make sure you watch Channel 10 News this week as a little thank you. Sorry to all my friends who work for Channel 7 and Channel 9. And
it's a zero-sum game.
yeah, exactly. So, and I have found some of the footage. Well, my friend found it, provided it to me. I have made it available. Gray will link to it on the blog. You can watch it. It matches my memory very well. But the thing I have still not found, and maybe it was a figment of my imagination, I have not found someone holding a child standing on the whale. But I have found an idiot standing on the whale. And this is actually not an uncommon thing. In fact, it's happening at the moment off Australia, a dead whale. And another one happened a few years ago that people sent. But the one that I was talking about from where we wanted to show it near Adelaide, I now have the footage. And I think it was from 2001 or I don't remember when it was. Anyway, it was a sort of footage that normally you wouldn't be able to find on YouTube because it was too old. But I have got it on there, so check it out.
If you want to see sharks eating a dead whale, the link in the show notes is for you.
Not just any sharks eating a dead whale.
Right.
Adelaide sharks.
Adelaide sharks. That makes them better sharks.
But I still insist that someone did something stupid holding a child. So I've actually got some more emails out to other media friends in Australia. My quest is not over here.
Yeah, you're going to track this down?
I'm going to get there.
All right.
Now, another picture that I was sent that I found interesting is this one. Hello Internet as a sleep aid. Someone has been using Hello Internet episodes to put their baby to sleep. If you click on the link there at the top of the show notes.
I have clicked.
This was from Jeff, who has put his young baby Vivian to sleep using what appears to be our Royal Society episode. So, happy to help. But I often fall asleep to podcasts and audiobooks. They do sometimes have that effect.
Yeah, so I have a theory about this because I have also seen people on Twitter complimenting us on our ability to help put them to sleep at night, which I totally understand that as a valuable service that we can provide to people, but it does always feel a bit, I know people who use podcasts for the explicit purpose of falling asleep and audiobooks and similar things. I don't do it myself, but my theory is that the commonality of the people I know who use podcasts to fall asleep is that when they're trying to get to sleep, they find that their brain is racing. Your brain is doing that thing where it's talking to itself about all kinds of stuff that you can't do now because you're in bed, you're going to sleep.
Yeah.
But your brain thinks this is an excellent time to think about all the emails that you haven't replied to or to start thinking about taxes. Does that happen to you?
It does a bit. My wife is a big one for this, and she does use audiobooks in that way. If she's buzzing too much, she'll sometimes say, "I just need to put an audiobook on for 10 minutes because I'm thinking about work or all the work that needs to be done tomorrow in the house and things." So,
yeah, that most of the time when I fall asleep, that isn't the case, but it does happen every once in a while where. Again, I'll use the phrase of it feels like my brain is just talking to itself.
Yeah.
Like it's just like it's talking away about stuff. It's like, shut up, brain. Shut up. There's nothing you can do about any of this. Yeah. And so my theory is that podcasts and audiobooks, the reason that they work is that they're engaging the language part of your brain. That your brain can't talk to itself while it's listening to something else.
Yeah.
And I think that's why podcasts are effective for helping people fall asleep. There might be people drifting off into slumber at this very moment.
Yeah. Should we enjoy?
You want to sing them a lullaby, Brady?
Sweet dreams. Sweet dreams, Tim.
Don't dream about dying on an airplane.
No.
But yeah, so that's my theory anyway, that the linguistic part of your brain is getting derailed so it can't talk to itself when it's listening to another podcast. And I think that's why many people use podcasts and audiobooks as a way to fall asleep.
It makes perfect sense to me. I think you're onto something. You should write a paper about it.
This baby, however, looks like it probably doesn't even have a language center of its brain.
No.
I'm not good with how old babies are. I'm betting this baby can't talk.
That probably could have gone to sleep to the
happening.
sound of a jackhammer.
Yeah. Well, babies, you can turn them off with white noise. If you just play white noise for babies, it's like a neurological shutdown switch. It's magic. It just puts them right to sleep.
Babies aren't the only people I know that doesn't mind sleeping to white noise.
I do sleep to white noise as well, but it doesn't put me to sleep. You can take a baby and put it to sleep sometimes with white noise. It's really interesting.
In fact, I seem to recall sharing a hotel room with someone who rarely shares hotel rooms, who liked to use white noise to go to sleep. Oh, this is cute. I thought it was so cute.
You thought it was cute that I listen to white noise while I sleep?
Yeah, like a little
thought
baby.
It was cute?
You're like a little baby.
If that's what you want to, that's how you want to think about it. Yes, we did share a hotel room many years ago when we knew each other far less well.
You'd never do it now.
That was a long time ago in San Francisco for YouTube EDU conference, I believe.
See, we couldn't do it now because now that I know you better, I would feel more emboldened to write things on your face with a Sharpie while you're asleep.
That's exactly it. Because we're better friends now, I could actually trust you less.
Yeah.
when we were much more like strangers, you have the social contract still holding things together. But now that's just out the window. I'd wake up with something indecent drawn on my forehead.
You need to lock yourself in a room now. Now, I seem to have struck a nerve of some people with my talk about saying that explorers don't really exist anymore, except as a TV job.
Right.
Like a title that people on TV call themselves.
Yes.
I'm sorry, everyone. I was being a little bit general. And people have brought up various exceptions and definitions and semantics. And anyway, what have you got, Gray? I'll let you go. I feel like you've got more to say about this than me.
Someone, Chucanero in the Reddit, gave a definition that I thought was a really good one. I don't know if this is original to them or if it's pulled from somewhere, but the thing that they wrote is an explorer is someone who travels somewhere, possibly not known when they set out, with poor expectations of what it will be like when they get there, with a poor idea of how they will survive, and without being able to contact anyone that can help them. I don't know if that's perfect, but I thought this captures a lot of the things that I think in my mind when I'm thinking about an explorer. And particularly that last part about not being able to contact people who can help you. And then the first part of not having a good expectation of what the place will be like when you get there. That to me is the idea. Like that's what exploring is. If you know what it's going to be like before you get there, I'm not sure it counts as an explorer. And the example that I wanted to bring up here is someone sent a link to this guy who discovers new rivers. Like he goes into the forest and discovers new rivers that nobody's charted before.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, yes, is this person an explorer? Sort of. I couldn't quite figure out why in my mind I thought I don't feel like this really counts. And to me, it's that first part of the expectations. You know what the forest is going to be like. It's not like a surprise when you find a river and go, oh, this river's unlike any other river we've ever seen before. It's purple. That's not, what a river in the forest is going to be like. And the person probably has abilities to get in contact with people who want to help them.
I think if you're going down a river that no human has ever gone down before, you are an explorer. You are an explorer.
I read an excellent and terrifying book a while back called The River of Doubt, which was about Teddy Roosevelt's expedition in Brazil along what was called the Rio de Dubia at the time, which was then given the vastly inferior name River Roosevelt after he went there. Oh, come on, man. Like, River of Doubt is such an awesome name.
Yeah.
The Roosevelt River is so boring. It's like, falling asleep even saying it.
Although River of Doubt sounds like a chapter in Getting Things Done.
If you are in the time of Teddy Roosevelt and you are doing because I'm just looking it up. When was it? That's right. This was after his failed re-election campaign as the Bull Moose candidate in 1912. So I think if you are going into darkest Brazil in 1912 along a river that nobody has any idea what all its tributaries are, I'm going to count that as an explorer.
Yeah.
I think in 2015, if you're still finding rivers, I don't think it's a remotely comparable situation.
Oh,
I
no.
think the world is too known.
I think it's hard to carve out a niche, and that's why I think it is a bit like, oh, that little tiny river there, no one's been down. But
Yes. Now, here is my question to you. The example many people brought up is deep sea divers.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on deep sea divers being explorers?
Yeah, I think there is a degree of exploration going on there. I think when someone jumps in one of those mini submarines and goes to the bottom of a trench, they're exploring. That's exploring. You're an explorer. I think even James Cameron was an explorer when he went down to the bottom of the Pacific. I know he wasn't the first to do it, but I think that was exploring.
I agree completely. That was the best counterexample of deep sea divers. You still are deserving of the term explorer,
and
even though you probably don't have swords.
People in caves too. A lot of people doing stuff in caves, I think, can also get away with calling themselves explorers.
That cave stuff is terrifying.
Yeah.
The people who explore those deep caves, that stuff is. I can't remember where I heard it. I heard some podcast talking about an interview with the people who'd gone down in one of the deepest caves in the world, and it's just terrifying, just in the total darkness. I'm not 100% sure I count that as exploring, but that's close. But I'm going to say deep sea divers are unambiguously modern explorers.
Using the definition that you gave a moment ago, what do you say about the astronauts who landed on the moon? They kind of knew what to expect. I guess they didn't really. They could communicate with people that could help them, although not physically.
Yeah,
they're unquestionably explorers, but that definition doesn't help them a whole lot.
It doesn't help them a whole lot. My mind's rubbing up against something with the astronauts going to the moon. I'm gonna give it to them, but I feel like there's something in my brain is going against this ever so slightly. But yeah, I think maybe the thing about the contact is even when you're going to the moon, the people on the ground can help you, but maybe not out of all kinds of situations.
No, a lot of the time their help is just saying, "It was nice knowing you."
Except for that scene in Apollo 13, which is still like my favorite movie scene ever. Of we have to make this tube go into this port with only using these materials. That is probably one of the best movie scenes.
Surely your favorite scene in Apollo 13 is when Gary Sinise spends hours and hours and hours trying to put a checklist in the correct order.
I don't remember that.
Remember they had to power up the LEM, but they had to do it in a certain order so they didn't go over a certain voltage, and they had to keep tweaking the order of the checklist.
Yes. I do remember that now. The scene of trying to connect. They were trying to connect the air input to the oxygen scrubbers. I think was that it?
Yeah.
You would know.
No, they had to get they had the wrong shape CO2 scrubber. They had to make a scrubber of a different shape fit a different hole, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There's something that viscerally gets me about that. Of dumping the materials on the table, and it's like, okay, we have a problem. There's a limited domain here, and we have a limited amount of time. We need a bunch of smart engineers to figure it out. That's the kind of help that they can give. But it's very different from, you missed the moon and you're going to fly off into deep space and just die. Well, sorry.
So exciting news. Mm-hmm. Gray has given me the password for the Hello Internet Patreon account, which means I can now post things into our Patreon feed, which I think gives you even more bang for your buck if you are supporting Hello Internet on Patreon. Because I feel like you could give more love than you give.
That is definitely true. I could give more love than I give to the Patreon feed.
So now I will endeavour to also go in there occasionally and give people a few little behind-the-scenes pictures and nuggets as a small thank you for those people who give just that little bit extra to help make this podcast possible.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you to all of them.
Yeah.
But Brady, you have plans. You're going to post updates from the Penguin? Is that what you're going to do?
I would like to
What's
do
your
that.
plans?
Have you got any kind of rules? I mean, you gave me the password very, very without any kind of conditions. Is there anything I'm not allowed to do with it?
I trust you entirely with this thing.
Okay.
You are free as a bird
Okay.
Patreon.
All right. So stay tuned there if you're one of these people who is following us in that way as well. Stay tuned as I unleash the power.
As Brady shows you his love.
I won't be posting any pictures of me doing my weigh-in earlier. I don't think the internet's ready for that.
It would be amazing.
It would be quite a sight. So I had a realization the other day. As you know, I had 2 copies of Getting Things Done. I had a hard copy and I had it on my Audible as an audiobook. It was on my phone. So some people may not be aware of this, but I sold my hard copy on eBay.
Yep.
The one with my notes scribbled all over it. It was purchased by a Hello Internet listener. It was signed by you and I.
Yes, you sent it to me to sign and then to send on to the lucky winner of that auction.
I hate to admit it, but I actually turned a tidy profit on that book. The funds will be reinvested into the purchasing of toys, which I film for our Hello Internet videos when we put them on YouTube. So that, in fact, it's already been spent on various inane toys from toy shops around the UK. But I had a sudden realization that Audible says, it claims that if you are not completely satisfied with your audiobook, you can get your money back. And I never return things. If I have something I like, I'm just a guy who doesn't return them. I don't go back to the shop and ask for my money back. I just put things in a shelf and never ask for my money back. But I decided I was going to put this to the test. Do they really give your money back if you're not happy? And is it a really difficult process where you have to navigate through a field of alligators and things like that? Turns out, very, very easy. I just went online, I ticked a box, said I didn't like it, got my credit back straight away, bought another book. Brilliant. So I now feel like I have not lost out as a result of buying those books, which I didn't like.
You are a net win on Getting Things Done in many ways.
Well, I'll never get that time back that I spent reading it and listening to it. That I like to think it gave us some good podcast fodder, but it's still hours of my life that are gone.
Yes, it is. It is still hours of your life that's gone. Although it is our most popular podcast episode so far, at least according to the new tracking system that I've set up. So I think we came out on a net win of your great dislike of Getting Things Done. And yes, you're right. It is. This is not an Audible advertisement. I don't actually know if they're sponsors for this show. I never know when we record these things.
No.
But yeah, I've done that a couple times, and I that is one of the things that I really like is because I listen mostly to nonfiction stuff, and very often nonfiction books have a promising first chapter, and then the book is just terrible. And so I have returned quite a few audiobooks with that policy. So I definitely appreciate it because audiobooks are not always super cheap. So being able to return one that's crappy is great.
I have another email from a listener that I wanted to share with you. This is someone called Carter. I don't know how much of it to read because it's quite long. I always like to pick out the points where they praise me in particular.
Yes, those are the best parts.
Yeah, and because it was written to me. This is someone. It should have been written to you as well, but this was one of those people who realized they would be wasting their time writing to you.
Yeah. I have basically not even opened my email in the last week and a half. So yeah, if they emailed me, it's not going to happen.
In fact, the one part that praised me here and that I quite liked was I have this number file video that a lot of people won't be familiar with, but great, you probably are, which is all about what happens if you add all the numbers together, 1 + 2 + 3 + 4 + 5, go forever, and it actually comes to minus a 12th. Depending on various interpretations. It's quite a controversial video.
Yeah, we talked about that one a while back.
So anyway,
that's a good one.
Carter talked about how he was recently at a job interview and was asked to tell the interviewer what is the most interesting fact you know. And he immediately told him that fact. And the interviewer was blown away and offered him the job. So that's the part that praises me, but that's not really what I want to tell you about. The part that is interesting to both of us says... Lastly, before I let you go, I know this is a long shot, but both you and CGP and your wives are cordially invited to my upcoming wedding to my fiancée. She and I would love to have the stars of Hello Internet at our wedding. It is the weekend of April 2nd in Chicago. CGP can deal with the jet lag.
Oh yeah? You going to go, Brady?
I'll go if you go.
Oh, nice try. Nice try, Brady.
I'll tell you what, the thing stopping me going, Carter, to your wedding, and I thought your email was brilliant and you sound like an awesome person, is not distance or jet lag or even necessarily plane tickets, although they're pretty expensive plane tickets. The thing stopping me going is how awkward it would be being at that wedding after about 8 seconds. Like, because, Carter, I've been to a wedding of my own and you have a lot to do and a lot of things in your mind and it's going to be the best day of your life. And talking to someone who does a podcast you listen to is going to be very, very minor. And that will be like a 5-second thing. And the rest of the time I'm there, I'm just going to be standing around feeling like a bit of an idiot.
Yeah. Weddings are strange events. Yeah. Attending weddings is weird. Going to other people's weddings are weird. They're just
being at a wedding where you don't really know the people getting married, because I've done this numerous times because I've filmed some weddings, but also it just happens sometimes, is a pretty awkward experience. And I think this would take the awkwardness to a whole other level. So I don't think I'll go, but I do wish Carter and his fiancée the best, and I hope they have an incredible wedding. And I hope he sends us a picture. And if you send us a picture from the wedding, I'll put it on the Patreon feed.
Oh, there we go. I feel the same way. I hope the wedding goes well, but I will not be flying to Chicago for a wedding.
No. It's really kind though.
It's very kind.
I once went to a party. It was in Adelaide where I was living, and the theme of the party was Adelaide. You had to do something sort of typically or iconically Adelaide, and everyone had a different twist on this, right?
You Adelaideans love your Adelaide.
Oh, it's a great place. So anyway, one of the guys had a bright idea, which was to invite, do you call them a busker? Yeah, you know what a busker is, don't you?
Yeah.
Like
the musicians on the underground.
Yeah, like a street performer. And there was this one guy in Adelaide who he was a bit strange. He was an odd character, and he also had odd dress sense and odd hygiene. I mean, in hindsight, he probably wasn't particularly well. Anyway, he was a busker, and he used to do weird performances on a harmonica or something like that, or on a little organ and things. And the guy organising the party thought it would be a bright idea to approach him in the street and invite him to this party, which was just a party in a house. So we all turned up, and there was this guy like playing his little music in the corner. And I was like, oh my goodness, it's amazing. It's an Adelaide legend. It's he's like a piece of the furniture in the streets of Adelaide. And here he is at our party. And we all thought it was great. And he did a few songs for us, and we gave him a clap, and it was brilliant. And then he was just standing there in the room with like 20, 30 other people. And it was really, really awkward. And no one knew him, so no one really knew. We'd talk to him and say hello, but it became really, really difficult. And I think the guy organising the party, in hindsight, realised this was something that seemed like a good idea, and then afterwards had created a really awkward social situation. I think that's what Carter would think later on if we turned up to his wedding.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
He'd be like, "Oh, it's Brady and CGP. I love your podcast. I sometimes fall asleep to it." And like shake our hands, and then like 2 or 3 minutes later, people would be coming up whispering to him saying, "Carter, can you ask those two guys to leave now?"
Yeah, exactly. I can imagine that situation would just be awkward all around for everybody. That's why the fact that the wedding is in Chicago is a lovely excuse, but I can say that if the wedding was downstairs in my own building, I would still say, oh, I'm sorry, I can't possibly make it. Anyway, thank you for the invitation.
Yeah.
Good luck with the wedding.
Yeah. Someone sent a fascinating picture to us, which was of Buzz Aldrin, obviously a man of some interest to me. Second man to set foot on the moon. Well known as a brand ambassador for the Omega Speedmaster, unsurprisingly, because he was the first man to wear an Omega Speedmaster on the moon, because Neil Armstrong, of course, didn't wear his. And it was a picture of Buzz Aldrin posing with a child or something like that at some publicity event. He's wearing what appears to be an Omega watch, probably a Speedmaster, on his right hand, and on his left hand, an Apple Watch.
Yep. You sent me this picture, and it is definitely an Apple Watch on his other hand. You weren't sure, which I found surprising, because I thought that you found that their cold, dead faces were distracting to you, or you don't like them. But yes, he is wearing an Apple Watch.
It's quite a small thing in the photo. It's not like it's a big zoomed in picture. I do know what an Apple Watch looks, and he's wearing lots of things on his wrists.
Mm-hmm.
I was pretty sure it was an Apple Watch.
Uh-huh. But didn't we make a joke about you wearing 2 watches a couple podcasts ago?
Yeah.
I can't quite remember. And now here is one of your idols sporting 2 watches.
I wouldn't call Buzz Aldrin one of my idols.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm terribly sorry.
Yeah.
Whoa. Things got serious all of a sudden.
Yeah. So I'm not gonna go there, but
I could tell.
The other thing that's interesting though is on the hand where he's wearing the Omega, it almost appears as though he's wearing an Omega with 2 different watches. Like it's one band, but it seems to have 2 watches attached to it. Like
yes.
Like he's inserted 2 watches onto the one band.
Yeah, I zoomed in on this and I sent this to you, and it definitely looks like he has one band with 2 Omega Speedmasters on it. Yeah. So that one face is on his wrist, and that one face is on the top of his so it looks like one face is on the inside of his wrist, and then one face is on the top of his wrist. He's a man who wears a lot of stuff on his wrists.
He's an eccentric character, Buzz Aldrin. He was part of a great thing, and he did a great thing, but he remains one of a kind.
So what do you think about him wearing 2, maybe 3 watches? What is your thought on this?
What do you think I think?
I'm gonna guess that you disapprove of this.
Yes, of course I do. He looks ridiculous.
You think that looks ridiculous to have the Apple Watch and an Omega Speedmaster?
Yeah.
No? You don't think this is in your future at some point, Brady?
Well, I think wearing an Apple Watch is just ridiculous, full stop, as you well know.
Right.
And I think having 2 Speedmasters on one band is kind of ridiculous too. So he's managing to go ridiculous both ways. It's not a look I would go for, but okay. I would, if it meant being in a spacecraft with Neil Armstrong when they landed on the moon, I would wear 2 watches. If that was the price I had to pay to have done that achievement, I would do it. But I don't think it's necessary to wear essentially 3 watches on your wrists to have done that. So I think he's just doing it voluntarily.
He might be starting a trend, though. I'm telling you, might be starting. a trend.
Don't get me wrong. I can see it because, like we said, you kind of have to wear the Apple Watch all the time to get the maximum value from it. And the Apple Watch does have its good points, but I think you've just got to make a decision and stick with it. You either adopt this new silly future, or you be a classy man of the past.
Right. Which way are you going with that, Brady? What's on your wrist right now?
Classy man of the past. Actually, no, there is no watch on my wrist at the moment. I actually just went back to the Speedmaster a couple of days ago, but I took it off for the podcast because I didn't want to risk it tapping on the desk. But it is sitting next to me. I am looking at it, but I am not wearing any watch just at this particular moment. Also, it would have been extra weight for the weigh-in, and I couldn't be risking that.
Yes, that must weigh many dozens of grams.
It's a heavy watch, the Speedmaster. You say that yourself. It's weighty.
It is. Yeah, it's weighty, but it's not weighty compared to a person. It's no significant amount of weight compared to a human being.
Every gram counts. Every gram counts.
That's right.
Who knows where this thing's doing the rounding? There must be a rounding point somewhere. I don't want to push up above a rounding point.
That's true. Yeah, maybe your scale is doing 4 decimal places like mine.
Yeah. So what do you think about wearing 2 watches then? Because could you do it? Because you obviously do want to wear the Apple Watch. You do still like analog watches.
Yeah, I think it's ridiculous as well.
Okay.
I can't imagine ever wearing 2 watches. That is not going to happen.
Yeah.
I still have the watch that my wife got me for our anniversary, which I really like. I have kept it. I can imagine wearing it on special occasions in the future, but I could never imagine wearing both the Apple Watch and my nice mechanical watch. This just not going to happen. You have to pick one or the other. And so maybe on some days I will be a classy gentleman of the past, but on most days I am wearing my Apple Watch.
If you were going out for your anniversary, like for dinner or something like that, and you decided, well, this would be a nice time to wear my classy watch from my wife, would there be a niggling part of your brain that would be disappointed that there's going to be like a gap in your data and I'm going to be doing all this walking tonight that's not going to be measured and there's going to be a gap in my heart data? And Would that gnaw at you, or
not
you'd be
really.
cool with it?
No, I'd be fine with that. I'm not a. Yeah, that wouldn't really bother
You're
me.
not like
I
this
just
uber
don't- I don't care.
completionist that wants everything. If everything is going to be recorded, then everything must be recorded.
For some things, I am a completionist, but this thing doesn't flip that switch in my brain.
Just a quick little correction from last time. I talked about my slow watch, and I mentioned it being mechanical. I was actually I kind of misspoke there. I used the wrong context of mechanical. I basically was meaning it had moving parts and moving hands, and it wasn't just a computer. It is a quartz watch, not a mechanical watch, the slow watch. It doesn't get wound up by springs and things like that, like my Speedmaster does. It is using a battery and quartz movement.
I used mechanical in that exact same
Yeah.
sense 20 seconds ago.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of we are aware there is a difference between a mechanical watch and a quartz watch, but
Yes.
you and I think, tend to make that mistake a little bit, and
Yes.
the real watch enthusiasts did call me on it, so I will make that little nod. I will also thank all the people who listened to the last podcast who contacted Slow Watchers about me becoming their brand ambassador. All the tweets and the emails, quite a few did.
Yes, I was looking at that as well. There was a lot of content.
Yeah. So
towards Slow.
and as a result, the excellent people at Slow who do make that watch that I really like have been in touch. I have spoken with them, but things move slowly at Slow. So I have nothing.
Can't rush those people.
I have nothing new to report at the moment. But that may come at a later time, and I'll let people know what happens. But I will say, in the meantime, if you are thinking of buying a Slow watch as a direct result of my advocacy, just hold out a bit longer. Don't make your purchase just yet. Just wait a bit longer.
Yeah? You want to have a little bit of pent up demand?
Yeah, I think so. I think there was a rush, but now I need to do some maneuvering.
Slow might be hearing from people who are just on the edge of purchasing a watch.
Yeah.
And they just need a little bit of a push
Yeah.
from an amazing brand ambassador to get them over that hurdle.
Yeah, maybe. And I will also get back to you later, Gray, with my more thorough review about the whole reading the time in different ways, because obviously now I'm doing the first transition from 24 face back to the 12 face. But, we can't be giving them too much free advertising at the moment.
Right, yeah. No, we'll talk about that at another point.
Yeah. So thank you very much. More follow-up? This is quite a lot of follow-up.
This is another one of our follow-up shows.
Another favourite topic of ours is different occupations of people who listen to our podcast.
I love this topic.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I find this fascinating, listening or hearing from people about what they do or their jobs while they're listening to the podcast. I love this kind of feedback. So what do you have?
So
what do you
I've
have
got
in these
two
links?
here. I've got one from Pat, who got in touch, who said, is it a he or a she? I don't know. It's Pat, so it could be a he or a she. Recently started listening to Hello Internet. I listen to it before and after shows. I'm a professional bass player and audio engineer. So my
That is very
immediate thought
cool.
is that sounds like a way too cool a person to be listening to our podcast. The second one is I think it really ups the pressure on our audio production if we have audio engineers listening.
It does put a little bit of pressure on, but those audio files, you can never make those people happy. They will just keep asking for more and more always. So we do the best we can, but I'm not going to even try to make the intense audio files happy because they'll always be unhappy.
Good for you. That's a good attitude to have. Got another one here. What's this one? Oh yeah, this was interesting. Dear Gray, it says Dear Mr. CGP Gray, and then in brackets and Brady, I guess. So it sounds like it's almost begrudgingly addressed to me as well. Anyway, there you go.
And Brady, I suppose.
I mean, how disappointed is this person going to be that I'm the one bringing up their comment rather than you? I've got another job where people, or at least I, listen to the podcast. I work as a drone operator. And while it might look cool in the ads, it's not. Most of the time is spent flying over oceans to the target and then circling it for hours. This is super boring, so we operators find ways to occupy ourselves. We've got little games on PowerPoint which we play to take up time. Usually only the mission operators, not It says usually only the mission operators, not the operators. I don't quite get that, but
They mean the people in control of the people who are operating the actual drones. That's the mission operator.
And while I can't actually listen to the podcast while flying a real mission, this is against the rules. I don't know if that's just been put in there as a qualifier or it's true. I did enjoy listening.
I'm sure it's truly against the rules.
Yeah. I did enjoy listening while in the simulator and got very annoyed when you had an episode which was only 45 minutes long. So keep up the good work and I will sure be listening regardless of on or off the job. So I think drone operator has to move pretty close to the top of the list now as interesting jobs listening to Hello Internet.
That is very interesting. Yeah. Someone who's a drone operator.
Yeah.
And certainly never listening to it on a mission because that would be against the rules.
That is against the rules.
But yes, drone operator, that is pretty high on the list of interesting jobs to be listening to or to be doing while listening to a podcast, at least in the simulator.
Several jokes popped into my head because that's the kind of guy I am, but I'm not going to make any jokes about drones. So let's just go on to the next item.
How could a drone joke go wrong, Brady? I don't see where this could possibly go wrong.
There was
possibly go wrong.
Yeah, I'm not. I've stopped. I've already walked away from this, Gray. Don't try and draw me back in.
I'm trying to fish you back in.
You're not getting me.
I'm trying to fish you back, Brady.
I'm not going there, man. I'm not going there.
Come make an offhanded, snarky remark about a drone. This could be fine.
Are you finished?
I'm sorry, Brady. This episode of Hello Internet is brought to you in part by Hover. Hover is hands down, bar none, the best way to buy and manage domain names. When you have a great idea for a website, Hover gives you exactly the tools you need to get the domain you want. It is really so simple. Hover takes all of the hassle and confusion out of registering a domain, and I've registered domains at many companies. Hover really is the brain dead simplest way to do it. And it looks so nice. Their website just looks great. You can go from nothing to having the domain name you want in 5 minutes or less. And Hover doesn't do tricky upselling techniques that other domain registrars use. The pricing is really clear, and they don't do any of this tricky stuff where you have to uncheck the box to not get a service that you didn't want in the first place. It's so clear. And the little detail I like the best is that they give you free domain name privacy, so that when you register, your personal details aren't spread all over the internet for anyone to see. Pretty much every other registrar charges you that because they know that you want to use that. Who wouldn't want to use that? But Hover considers it just part of buying a domain. And if you have your domain names trapped at some other registrar, Hover has a free valet transfer service so that you can skip the hassle of trying to move your domains over from wherever they are registered. And Hover has the best customer support around. They have a no wait, no hold, no transfer phone service. So when you call, you get a real live human being that is ready to help. These are some of the many reasons why I have my dozens and dozens of domains registered at hover.com. So if you want to register a website, go to hover.com, use the code FREAK to get 10% off your first purchase. That's hover.com, offer code FREAK to show your support for Hello Internet.
There was a really interesting article in The Guardian, which Gray will link to, no doubt. It was all about computers doing journalism. At the time I read it, I was really excited. I put the link in the notes and told Gray we had to talk about it. I've pretty much now forgotten what was in it. But it's worth a read. You have read it too, haven't you?
Yes, I just read it. I just read it right before the show. Let me just pull it.
Oh, see, that's smart. That's what I should have done.
Yeah, that's what the show notes are. That's why I go through the show notes right before we're about to do the thing. Otherwise, it all falls out of my brain.
I was asleep right before the show started. I can't be reading before the show. That was sleep time.
Yes, that's true. The thing that the thing that this article talks about, a couple points. It's largely talking about a company called Narrative Science, which is one that I don't know if I mentioned them by name, but I was talking about them in the Humans Need Not Apply video. And broadly speaking, they are a company that is working on algorithms that can produce human readable material of all forms. And so one of the things that this article is talking about in particular is computer algorithms that can write up a story about what happened in sports games. But their focus is broader than that. They want to be able to feed an algorithm a bunch of data from a company and have it produce a quarterly report in the same way a human would. This is all the stuff that they're working on. But there were two points that I wanted to bring up, because whenever you mention this stuff, people just push back on it. When they show people articles written by humans versus written by the algorithms, people rate them slightly differently in terms of which ones are friendly and accessible or informative and authoritative.
Yeah.
But the key here is that there is not some huge difference where people say, oh, this is obviously written by a machine and it's crap. People don't, like, everybody thinks that they can tell the difference, but they really can't when you put them in a double blind situation, even if they rate things slightly differently. So yes, they said, oh, the human written ones were a little bit more friendly and the computer written ones were a little bit more authoritative.
Yeah.
But this is the same thing. Like in the video that I made, I mentioned about the music, and I say, oh, this music is written by a computer algorithm. And everybody writes back, oh, I could totally tell it was written by a computer because it sounds repetitive and blah, blah, blah. But when you, again, if the Emily Howell is the name of the computer program that writes the music, when you do it with double blind and you don't tell people which one's written by the human and which one's written by the computer, people can't tell. Everybody just thinks they can tell once you tell them what the answer is. And this is why I mentioned in the video when I did that almost certainly anybody who reads newspapers has already read something that was summarized by a computer algorithm. Like this is already happening, and people just underestimate how good this stuff is. It's not perfect, but it's good enough to fly under the radar of people telling the difference between a human and a computer.
I'll tell you what, Gray. There is one. I do have one issue here. It seems to me, at this stage, for obvious reasons, the real strength of these algorithm-written articles seems to be in the sphere of things which are very quantitative. Business reports,
that's why they're
sports
using
games,
sports games.
because I mean, I could just look at a baseball box score or a financial report and write an article having not been at the game. Okay, so that's fair enough. But when they do these double-blind tests and they show you two match reports from a game of baseball, the thing that the people doing the double-blind tests don't have and didn't do was go to the game. So it's very hard to know how good a report of the game it is if you didn't also see the game. For example, say I went to a game. Say I went to the Yankees versus the Red Sox, and the Yankees won 3-2, and so-and-so hit a home run, and there was a double, and this pitcher had this record. Billy, the journalist who wasn't at the game, could write a report, and the computer could write a report, and maybe someone couldn't tell the difference. But what if halfway through the game, Derek Jeter stood on second base and took off his trousers and painted his legs pink and started doing cartwheels? That's not going to be in the box score. That's not going to be anywhere. So when the computer writes the report of all the noteworthy things that happened during the game, that's going to be completely omitted. Someone who is actually at the game, I think they're probably going to start their report with that and give very little to the actual score of the game, because it was such a remarkable thing that happened that is what needs to be reported on. And that's an extreme example. But I just think the computers and the algorithms sometimes, miss the wood for the trees, or whatever you want to call it. They don't really know what's interesting. And sometimes you can't be taught what's interesting because the thing that's interesting is something that's never been seen before. And that's I think the value of reporting. And a computer will never know what the emotion of the crowd was. The computer can't know what noise the crowd made when Alex Rodriguez came out to bat. Did they boo him? Did they cheer him? Did they start off booing him but then cheer him when he hit the home run? All of these subtleties and things that matter to humans are very hard to pick up with a computer.
Oh, yeah. And when I talk about this stuff, like I completely agree with you that in very, very many domains, the best human is still always going to be able to crush the computer today. Like there's no doubt about it. Like I could send Brady to a cricket game and I can send an algorithm to the cricket game, and Brady's going to write a way better article about that cricket game than the computer possibly can. But I think that all of this stuff is we're looking at the toddler version of what these computers and these algorithms can do. Like I don't doubt that at some point in the future, you could feed just the straight video of a computer game you could feed just the straight video of a sports game to a computer, and the computer could write out a story about it. I think that's going to be able to happen sometime because we already know that humans can do that. And unless you think that there's something magically different about the human brain, I think anything that a human can do, a computer algorithm will eventually be able to do at some point. And we're just looking at the very, very beginnings of all of this stuff. What do you think about that?
I remember when I was reporting, sometimes something would happen like a tragedy. I remember a really bad tragedy once happening, and a little boy died, and I had to write a story about it. And the family let me come to the house and sit in the room with them and talk to them for a couple of hours. And a lot of things happened in that room, and that coloured and painted the way that I wrote the story about the tragedy of this boy dying. And I just can't see in the next hundreds and hundreds of years that a computer could have got from that what I got from it. I can't see it, great, and I know they're going to get good, but I just can't see a computer thinking to ask the things that I would have asked and looked at the places I would have looked and taken in the subtleties I took in. And maybe one day they will. And also maybe I was pretty ham-fisted and didn't write the final story very well anyway. But I just can't see it. I can't. Like I can read, if all I want to know is who won the baseball game, I don't care if it was written by some 17-year-old intern watching it on TV or an algorithm. And if the algorithm's a bit cheaper for the news service, then okay, I only want the score anyway. But I just can't see journalists being replaced by computers. Journalists won't be replaced by computers certainly before airline pilots and things like that, because there's just things computers can't do. And the human brain is quite unique in some of those abilities, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. The unique part is a bit different. You pick an example which is the most intensely human example there can possibly be, right? And a bereavement and another human in the room. So I will grant you that on the list of jobs that computers are doing, that little moment there is one of the farthest down the lines you can possibly have.
Yeah.
Right? But that is not 99% of what newspapers are doing.
Yeah.
Like that is shockingly rare. And my in the economy of these things, my concern is always people talk about the things that machines can't do, but you have a problem long before the last few things that humans do fall.
Yeah.
Also, when you're talking about hundreds and hundreds of years in the future, I would actually bet that a machine could do that job. That if you're talking 500 years in the future, you could have a robot that looks as good as a human that can be more empathetic than a human could be. But at that point, you're talking about just science fiction kind of futures. But if you're saying never in 10,000 years can humans create a convincingly human machine, I'm going to go no on that, because otherwise I feel like you're just saying there's something magic about humans. And I don't see that stage. Like I don't go along with
Gray,
with
I think there is
it.
something magic about humans.
See, this is where we just have a fundamental disagreement. If you believe in magic, I can't unargue you.
I
from
don't
magic.
mean magic as in Harry Potter. I mean something.
Do you mean magic as in something that is outside of the physical constraints of the universe?
No.
Okay. Then like I don't think that it is impossible to imagine completely simulating a human brain in a computer. Like, do you think that that's an impossibility, that in 10,000 years of human progress we'd never be able to do something like that?
I don't know.
See that, and this is what I mean, is I think that you could simulate a human brain, that it ultimately comes down to neurons and electrical connections, and you can reproduce that inside a computer. And so that to me is why I can get to the argument of, if you can simulate a human brain, and there is a human brain simulation project that the European Union is working on right now, if you can do that, then it's at some stage it's game over for humans, physical meat-based humans, being the best at everything. Because once you get a brain on increasing computing power, you can start simulating a human brain at 1.1x the speed of a regular brain, and then 2x and 5x and 10x and 100x. And that's why, I mean, I even think like stuff that I do, intensely creative work that is, it's singular in a way. Like, there's no reason that my brain couldn't be perfectly simulated, or that you couldn't just like the stuff that I used to do with genetic algorithms back in my university days. I mean, this has like vast moral, ethical implications, but just go with me for a second. You can do the kind of thing where you spontaneously create 10,000 simulated human brains and have them produce artwork and see how other simulated brains react to them. And you could create amazing works of art that humans would find better than anything that has ever been created, because you know what gets reactions out of people. And that's why I think all of this is, eventually at some point, machines will be better than humans at everying.
Great.
That's not
take
today.
Away,
but,
Take away the can you tell the difference thing for a moment, okay? If a new podcast came out that was made by a bot that basically just crawled all the podcasts in iTunes, found all the best bits and what works and doesn't work, and created a simulated two dudes talking, where they weren't two dudes, they were just two Macs talking to each other in a human voice, just talking crap about whatever like we do, but it was just drawn upon all the stuff that was out there that it could find and what worked best. Would that be a podcast you would get a lot of pleasure from, knowing that it wasn't two dudes?
Okay, so here's the thing. You're proposing something that sounds terrible, which is just trying to do something today. But can I imagine a podcast that is between two computers talking to each other being better than our podcast? I can imagine that being the case at some point. Because why do I listen to podcasts? I listen to podcasts to be entertained. I listen to podcasts because I like the personalities of the people who are talking, even if I don't care what they're talking about.
Oh, you said personalities. That's interesting. I didn't think you'd say that, but because that's a crucial thing to me. But
yeah, but that's entirely true. There are several podcasts where I don't care or even understand what the people are talking about sometimes, but I listen because I like the personality of the person talking. But it ultimately comes down to me that my personality and your personality are the result of neurons firing in a particular order, in a sequence in our brains. And that's why I can say that, yes, I can imagine an algorithm creating an enjoyable podcast to listen to with voice synthesis that gets good enough, because I just don't think that there's anything special about the brain. Like my personality is the way it is because of the neurons and the order that they're connected in my mind. It's not magic. That's what I mean when I say magic is some kind of other, not reproducible thing. And that's what I mean by that.
But does the free will at the other end, does the fact people listening to us know that we're doing this by a free will add to their pleasure? Because let me ask you this.
Are you trying to okay, you go ahead.
Let me ask you this, Gray. This is a purely hypothetical question, and therefore you should feel safe answering it. because this technology does not exist and will not exist in our lifetime. But if the technology did exist for there to be really, really good simulated human beings and customized to your every whim, would you be happier with a robot wife than with your wife? Could they make a better suited wife for you than your wife?
I'm going to stop you right there.
Yeah.
This is an argument in my marriage, and my wife thinks that we have a no holodecks rule, and I think that we don't. And I think that this is not necessarily a not within our lifetime kind of argument. I can imagine computer simulations taking off and having a holodeck-like situation. So again, to me, this just always comes down to first principles of if you can completely simulate a human mind, there's nothing that humans do that you can't do better ultimately with machines. And the holodeck thing about, if a holodeck or virtual reality exists in some ways, I'm pretty convinced that is an end of civilization moment. And the Fermi paradox?
I don't know.
I have that right. Yes, I think I think I have the name right off the top of my head.
It's from Enrico Fermi.
Yeah, it is the question about why haven't we been visited by aliens? Right. That you can run a calculation that basically says, no matter how low you think the probability of intelligent life developing is, the number of stars and the number of planets is so astronomical that there has to be intelligent life elsewhere in the universe. And I go along with that hypothesis. Like, I believe in aliens, not that they have visited the Earth, but I believe that there is intelligent life elsewhere in the universe. But the paradox is that if there is intelligent life, you can also run the numbers and say that we are probably later to the civilization stage than other people. So why haven't aliens actually visited Earth? Or why haven't we found any messages from aliens? This is the Fermi paradox, is why does it seem like there are fewer aliens than everything that we know about science tells us there should be? And there are many questions about why that, or there are many answers to this possible question. And two of them which relate to our current question is that one, that intelligent civilization ends up in some kind of self-destructive loop.
Yeah.
No matter what it is, that once you get smart enough, there are mistakes that you can make that are very probable that are also civilization-ending mistakes.
Yeah.
And so we used to think nuclear weapons were one of these things. It seems like we're mostly past that, but you still have the possibility of destroying the Earth. But the answer that I actually think seems like it might be one of the most relevant, and I read this on, I think, edge.org a while back, is that the late game of civilization is intelligent life creates simulations that are better than the actual physical universe. And so entire civilizations just say, we're done with the real universe. And that because the virtual universe can be designed in a way that is vastly more attractive than the real universe.
So they sort of basically say, should we go and explore the stars or just play Call of Duty for the next 10,000 years?
Yeah, I mean, when you put it that way, it's a thing that sounds really trivial. But what I think you have to imagine is, it's not like it's Call of Duty, but you talk about something which is almost irresistibly attractive in a simulated universe because it is designed to hit every single one of your buttons. And the possibility as well is that you don't even know that you have put yourself inside of an amazing simulation, right? If that's what your brain needs, like that's what you do. And so Brady, you get to live the life of a 18th century explorer, and that's just the perfect thing for your brain, and you just love it all day long. But part of the simulation is that you don't even know that you're in the simulation.
Well, if you don't know, fair enough, okay. If you don't know you're in a simulation, well, how can I argue with that? But the thing I think is there's something very powerful about the free will thing. So even if I made X30 Uber Robot 10,000 that looked amazing and just acted and did everything you want, that still wouldn't be the ideal wife for you, because you know that it has no choice but to be your wife. There's something very powerful about someone who doesn't have to say yes, saying yes. And when you asked your wife to marry you, or even something as even simpler when you first tried to kiss her, maybe, the fact that she didn't have to let you, but she did, is such a powerful drug and means so much to us. And I don't think robots and simulations give us that. Okay, if we don't know, if we're in the simulation too and we don't know that they were making a choice, well, how can I argue with that? But if we do know, I think having that taken away from us is a huge, huge sacrifice and will be a huge loss. And I think that is always very motivating. And that's where my problem with RoboWife comes from.
Okay, but here's the thing. We're coming to another fundamental problem, which is that I think free will doesn't exist. I think this idea that people are making decisions is not real either.
Okay.
Right? That it feels that way, but it isn't. Like free will is an incredibly convincing illusion.
Right.
But that it's not real. That I feel like I make choices, but I have no ability to explain, like, who is the me that made this choice? Like, why did I choose one thing or the other? I think if you pay attention to the way your mind operates, it's easy to see that you have a feeling of being in control without actually being in control. And this is one of the reasons why I tend to use a lot of language where I describe, I'll say something like, my brain does X. Because I don't know, I feel like I'm very aware of this distinction between how things feel and how things actually are.
Okay, great. Well, let's say you and I don't have free will.
Yeah.
I still want to call what we have free will light, because I think it is something different to what a robot has. So even if it is all predetermined by the arrangement of whatevers, I still think it's different to the robot thing, and it means more to me than the robot thing.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, and the thing with a computer is that the nature of what it does is laid bare. The computer, I mean, a computer in a way is like a very complicated flour mill. You can go into a flour mill and you can look at all of the pieces and how they move around, and you can see that this is a machine that just does something. That the flour mill doesn't have any choice in processing flour. It just does it because of all the mechanical parts. And ultimately, a computer is the same thing. It doesn't have any choice in what it does, but it's a much more complicated version. You can't look at a computer and see how it works, but you know conceptually, okay, a computer someone has programmed this. It's running through code. It might be running through millions and millions of pieces of code, but it's still just operating on inputs and getting outputs. And if you understand all of the inputs, you can perfectly predict all of the outputs. I think that humans are just one level above that in terms of complication. That if you perfectly understand all of the inputs going into a person, you could, in theory, perfectly predict all of the outputs. And we can't do that right now because it's just too complicated. In the same way that when a person looks at a computer, most of the time they can't perfectly predict how it does everything because it's too complicated. But there's no fundamental difference here. It just feels different because it's complexity squared. But I think from the first principles, it's not any different at all.
So, Gray, when your wife comes home from work and brings you like a surprise present, or I phone you up and say something nice to you, like compliment you.
You've never done
that. No, okay, I was just using a hypothetical there. Let's go back to when your wife does something nice. When you're sitting
Why don't you bring me flowers, Brady?
When you're sitting next to your wife and she strokes your arm or gives you a gift or says something nice to you, does that give you no pleasure? Do you just sit there and think, well, you had no choice but to say that. You had no choice but to do that because you were predestined to do it, and you must just sit there and go, well, that means nothing to me because the universe decided that. Or do you think, wow, she just did something nice because she loves me? Which like how do you gain any enjoyment from anything if you think it's all that like that?
But
where does the pleasure come from?
These are two totally separate questions.
It's not a separate question. When your wife strokes your arm and smiles at you, where does the pleasure come from for you if you think that was predetermined?
But here's the predeterminedness of it doesn't make any difference. You also start getting into just absolutely bizarre questions here of that. Like I like my wife can make me happy, but she makes me happy because of the very structure of my brain in perceiving happiness. Do you know what I mean? Like just think for a second. Like here's a bizarre thought exercise for people. I've done this with a few people in real life. It's a bit hard sometimes to think about, but whoever you are, listener, think about someone that you find attractive, right? Imagine their face in your mind. Mm-hmm. Now, if you think about this too much, you can realize, wait, there's nothing intrinsic about the face that you're imagining that actually is attractive. The whole notion of attractiveness is something that exists in your brain. It doesn't exist on the person's face, right? You are not perceiving attractiveness on someone. Their face is coming into your mind, and because of the way that your brain is structured, you perceive it as attractive. But it's not a thing that's really there. What you're really looking at is a thin layer of meat on top of some bone, right, with some watery sacs in the middle that look out at you as well.
Wow.
That's what a face really is.
Great, that's lovely. Was that part of your wedding vows?
Yes, but it doesn't change the fact that you perceive it as being beautiful or being attractive. Right? These two things can be the same. Attractiveness does not exist in other people, but you subjectively perceive a thing as attractive. But here's why. I perceive things as attractive because of the structure of the way my brain is set up. And that's true for absolutely everybody. And here's a great example. When a dog looks at a person, they don't see that person as being beautiful or attractive because they're a dog. Their brain is wired differently so that they look at other dogs and think, boy, that dog is really attractive. But it's nothing about the dog, right? It's everything about the person's brain or the dog's brain. So that's why these are separate questions about how can you derive pleasure if the universe has no free will. It's like things that make me happy because of the way my brain is structured. This is what I've said before on the podcast sometimes of like interest. There's no explaining why some things are interesting to people and other things are not. I mean, even we just talked about it earlier. Why am I interested in container ships, but I have no interest in airplanes? There's no explanation for that. There's no reason for that. It has something to do with the very structure of the way that my neurons happen to be connected, which has everything to do with the way that I happen to have grown up and my genetics and all this stuff. But like, I'm not in control of that. I don't choose to be interested in container ships, but not interested in airplanes.
Yeah, but Gray, you talk like you're on a higher plane than that. I agree. I just have this basic structure of wiring, and I find that person good looking and that person not, right, etc. But my wiring seems to be quite happy to let me live with various illusions, or what you would describe as illusions. But you seem to say, no, I don't fall for those illusions. You know, I'm above that. Like, I don't think that my wife chose to bring me flowers. I don't think that, because I know better. And therefore, if you know better, see, I do think my wife chose to bring me flowers, you see. But if you know better and you think yours didn't, I think you're one step further away from being pleased by it. Or
there's no knowing better here. There's no knowing better here at all. And this is always the argument when you start talking about free will. It's like there's two different things going on. Do people make choices? And I think that the answer is no. That ultimately people are deterministic. But then there's a whole separate thing, which is the layer in which you subjectively live your life, which feels like you make choices. And that's why let's say Science Tomorrow came out with a study that said we proved for 100% sure that free will doesn't exist. Yeah. You know, we got out a big enough microscope and we looked and went, it turns out it's nothing but gears below the quantum level. Yep. Right? This is just all gears and springs. Yep. And then the day after that, scientists come out and say, oh, actually, we discovered, no, for 100% sure, there is free will because we looked at the bottom of the universe and below the gears, there's pixie dust that's magic.
Yeah.
And so free will exists.
Yeah.
I don't think anything about the way I live my life changes on either of those 2 days. Both of those days, I have the same reaction of, that's interesting. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because the subjective level in which you live your life is so all-encompassing that the mechanics behind it don't really matter. Is it free will or is it pixie dust? Or is it a mechanistic universe? It doesn't make any difference in my daily life. It doesn't change anything in how I relate to people or how people relate to me. I don't think it really matters.
Let me ask you this then. When something nice does happen, I keep clinging to this scenario of your wife bringing you flowers home, right?
Yeah.
You say that day to day, you're just like me, and you this illusion of choice and things helps bring you pleasure, right?
Mm-hmm.
How long for you is it until that illusion is snatched away and your intellect takes over and says, oh, silly emotional grey, of course you realise she didn't choose to bring you those flowers. How often do those thoughts come to you? How often is the rug pulled away from the illusion in someone like you? Every day? Once a year?
The answer to that is never and always. Right? It's because I never think this way. Because what I was trying to say before is it doesn't matter.
For a guy that never thinks that way, you talk about it a heck of a lot.
But what I mean is, in your personal human reactions, it doesn't matter if my wife does something nice out of free will or out of a deterministic universe. It doesn't make any difference from my perspective which of those is true. Like I personally think that we live in a universe where there is no free will, but it doesn't make any difference.
Okay.
Like it doesn't diminish acts of niceness to think that they have not been done by free will. I think this is the argument you're making, and maybe you'll be a bit more sympathetic to this. The argument you're making to me sounds very similar to the argument I sometimes hear from people who are not sciencey people, who say that, oh, don't you think learning about a rainbow makes a rainbow less beautiful? That's a bit what I think this argument is similar to.
Yeah.
And I would bet your opinion is the same, that knowing more about a rainbow doesn't make looking at a rainbow any less of an enjoyable experience. If anything, it might make the experience more enjoyable. I don't think knowing that we live in a universe without free will makes anything more enjoyable, but I certainly don't think it detracts.
I don't agree. Maybe this says...
Do you think knowing about the rainbow does make it less beautiful?
I remember as a child when I would see a rainbow and I still believed there was a pot of gold, or I still believed maybe we would get to the point where I could see it hitting the ground.
Uh-huh.
Just being captivated and completely charmed and in love with rainbows. And seeing a rainbow was like a life-changing experience. And as we would drive along, I would pray that we would get to the point where it actually touches the ground, because I've never seen the point where a rainbow actually touches the ground. Now that I realise that those things don't exist, I still think rainbows are very beautiful and will get out my smartphone and take a picture of it. But it has nowhere near the effect it used to have on me when I thought there was a pot of gold at the end.
Yeah, but you're also talking about when you were just an idiot child. I mean, that's okay. Can you compare something where you're an adult? You're not a little kid who believes in leprechauns. I mean, I think you're comparing two wildly different things. Is there anything
I've used an extreme example, but I think it still makes the point that I don't agree with this whole sciencey argument that's always made that once you know the truth of what's going on, it's more beautiful or more captivating. I agree it's more interesting, and I love knowing how things work and knowing all the details and then telling all those details to people. But I do think there is a degree of... There is some nice things that get stripped away with that we have to accept. That's part of becoming an adult and becoming knowledgeable.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just unconvinced here. I don't know. We're getting off now into an argument about does science make things less beautiful? Which, of course, I'm gonna come onto the side of no, it does not. But
it makes things less magical, and because magic isn't real,
because magic is made up.
Yeah, and because magic is
of course
made
it
up,
makes things less magical.
Yeah, but things that are made up can still bring great pleasure. You love Lord of the Rings, and I hate to tell you this, Gray, none of that's real, but you still get pleasure from escaping into that fantasy. And I think there's beauty in fantasy and beauty in things that aren't real. You like Star Wars. That's not real either, Gray, but you still like it.
Yeah, I know that, but your metaphors, they break my brain sometimes, Brady. They really do.
There's nothing, what I'm saying is there is pleasure to be gained from things that aren't real. And believing that there's a pot of gold at the end of a rainbow can bring more pleasure, I believe, sometimes than understanding what's happening with the light being refracted and bouncing here, there, and everywhere.
Okay, but what kind of crazy argument is that? Because Lord of the Rings is written as a kind of alternative history, like a lost mythology for England. This is part of why it was created. Would you say
Don't
that it
cling
would be
to
better?
Lord of the Rings. Just use fiction in general.
But would you argue that we should, instead of teaching actual history, teach Lord of the Rings? Because
hang
it's
on.
way
Now
more
you're being
enjoyable
unfair. Now
and
you're
magical
being
than
unfair.
actual history.
Now you're being unfair. I didn't say that we should be teaching in school that there's pots of gold at the end of the rainbow. That's not what I said at all.
Okay, yes, but I'm genuinely not understanding what point you're trying to make.
I'm saying once you know the truth, once science strips bare the truth, that doesn't mean it's nicer or prettier or more enjoyable or more beautiful.
What I'm trying to say is that knowing the truth about a thing doesn't detract from it. I don't think it detracts.
Well, I think in some ways it does detract from it. I think it does detract from it. And I'm not saying it means we shouldn't do it. And I do it more than anyone. I make a career doing it, making videos about how things really work. I don't make videos. I have made videos about how rainbows work. I have not made videos about leprechauns being at the end of the rainbow. But I got more pleasure from rainbows when I didn't know the truth. I'm glad I know the truth, and I wouldn't change it for $1 million because I'm someone who has to know the truth.
Right.
But there was a lovely pleasure I gained when I didn't know the truth, and I almost feel more fondly about those times.
Okay, so to try to bring it back, you would say that if we knew for sure tomorrow that there was no free will, that the universe was deterministic, that would make you sadder?
I would be glad I knew the truth, and I would make videos about it, and I would always be at pains to tell my friends the truth and tell them, look, guys, this is the way it is. Science has proven it. But I would think more fondly of the time when I thought that my wife chose to marry me. I would wish that had been the case, but I would accept the truth and adopt the truth wholeheartedly.
I think this is now just coming down to the fundamental difference with us. Whereas I don't have that reaction and you do. So here we are then. Just like I think you should never get an Apple Watch. I think you should not think for too long about the nature of choice in the universe.
I think just after the toothbrush, perhaps, razors and razor blades are among those things we wind up buying the most and for the rest of our lives. It can easily become a bit of a chore, but Harry's makes it a pleasure. Harry's are a sponsor of today's show, and in a second I'll tell you how you can get $5 off your first purchase. But first of all, who or what are Harry's? Basically, Harry's offer high-quality razors and blades for a fraction of the price of those bigger brands. Harry's was started by two guys who basically just wanted a better product without having to pay the GDP of a small nation to get it. It's crazy some of the prices you pay for razor blades in shops these days. Now, Harry's make their own blades in their own factory in Germany, and as a result, you get factory direct pricing. A starter set, which includes a razor, moisturizing shave cream or gel, and 3 blades, will cost you as little as $15, and that's without the discount. And when you need more blades, you're looking at as low as $2 each or less. Now, this is going to make me sound crazy, but in my family, we're a little bit bathroom proud. It's one of the nicer rooms in our house, and my wife and I are always really careful about what we buy. Even shampoo bottles have to look right for the room. With Harry's, it's a no-brainer. They've got such classy designs and great packaging, they're always a welcome addition to the bathroom. I told you that was going to sound a bit crazy. But it is a product that not only does a really good job, that's the most important part, actually giving someone a good shave, but it does look really nice. Now, if you'd like to get started with Harry's, either for yourself or as a lovely gift for someone else in your life, check out their website. It's harrys.com and use the promo code HI, as in Hello Internet, HI, and that's going to get you $5 off your first purchase. The site's really worth a look and it gives you a really good idea what the product's all about. In fact, I was just on there and they have a new product, a product I hadn't seen before, these little stands that you can put your razor on. They're like these little cool silver cubes, really nifty. So check them out. That address again, it's harrys.com and the offer code for the $5 off is HI. Our thanks to Harry's for supporting Hello Internet. Can I talk about World Asteroid Day, which was just the other day?
We are 0% of the way through our show notes, so we got on a huge derailment there.
I'll keep this quick. Because we've talked about asteroids before. It was World Asteroid Day the other day, so we were driving along and I was talking with my wife about asteroids. We both know our positions on whether we would want to know if a global killer was coming and is it a good thing.
Right.
The question my wife asked that I found very interesting, and I wonder what your opinion on this is, for all the people who follow asteroids, and I guess it's, NASA's and other bodies like that, and they know the percentages of this happening and that happening, and this one's going to miss by that much. What do you think the sort of threshold or cutoff or trigger point is for taking one of these things to the president? At what point, how many of these things do they sit and tell the president about?
Are you asking how often does the president get a memo about there's an asteroid that might hit the Earth?
If at all. Or what would trigger him getting a memo or a visit to his office of someone saying, look, we think you need to know?
I don't know. Does the president need to know? Is there anything he can do about it? I don't think that's an actionable item almost all the time.
So you think they wouldn't tell the president if they thought an asteroid was going to hit the Earth?
I don't know. I'm in my brain. I'm trying to think about what the policy decision for this would be. I don't know. What do you think? How often should the president know?
I don't know what the trigger point is, but I definitely think that they would tell him if they thought one was going to hit to some level of certainty.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I guess if the president takes a sudden vacation with his family, an unexpected vacation, we should all figure, well, that's not good news. Right? Maybe every presidential vacation announcement should be treated in that way of, uh-oh. That's my advice to people. When you hear the president's gone on vacation, you should think, this doesn't sound good.
Or if we suddenly announce that we're not going to be doing a podcast for the next 4 months.
Right. We're going to take a little break for 5 weeks and 3 days.
Yeah, we'll talk to you all then.
Back after that.
And I just want you all to know we love you very much.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know. So what is it? I'm more interested in what is this World Asteroid Day? I
don't know. It's some awareness day, probably for people who are trying to get funding for asteroid tracking or something.
I mean, there should definitely be funding for asteroid tracking.
Definitely.
I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah.
Mainly because even if it's not a probable event, the downside is huge. You need to protect yourself against massive downside events, and that's one of those cases. So if World Asteroid Day gets more funding towards looking to the skies for asteroids, I'm all in
Although
favor
at
of
a
that.
time when, let's be honest, we probably couldn't stop an asteroid, what is the point of spending millions and millions?
Well, I think part of the point would be to try to figure out how to stop it as well.
Oh, okay. Well, that's different. Okay. Yeah.
Honestly, if we're just looking and we have no ability to do anything, well, that's a wasted money.
Yeah.
Why bother? I would shut down it if we're not even thinking about how to stop stuff.
I wonder what percentage of space expenditure is spent on exploration versus protection from impacts.
Yeah, the thing that I used to have to mention in the physics curriculum for asteroid impacts, which did come up as a little thing, was very cost-effective ways to stop asteroids. And one of the ones that I thought was the most interesting to talk about, if I don't know the actual practicality of it from a scientist perspective, but talking about how if you can spot it very far in advance, that one of the possibilities is to just paintball it, basically.
Yeah.
To just hit it with a big thing of white paint.
Yeah.
And that just by slightly changing the reflectivity of it, if you know the asteroid is far enough away, slowing it down because there are more photons bouncing off of it from the sun, even just an infinitesimal amount will accomplish your task of making it not hit the Earth.
Yeah.
Because the Earth is such a tiny target and the asteroid is so far away. So that's why I think I can imagine that if you have enough warning, there's crazy stuff like that you could do that could affect it. But if it's it's going to hit us in a week, that's probably too late. It's probably not going to help.
The other good thing about painting it white is even if it doesn't stop it hitting us, we'll get a better look at it coming.
Yeah. It's just a cool thing to do. Yeah. Just to hit the asteroid with the paintball.
Yeah. It's like the military. They just want to whitewash everything.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Okay, I have to ask you now. I've been looking at this item in the show notes, and I've been very curious about it. You have written world's ugliest dog.
Well, every year,
What is this?
they have this competition, and it ends up getting lots of YouTube videos, and it's one of those like annual novelty stories that the media like so much. It's a competition. I imagine it must be held in America because where else would it happen? And they
Good old journalists doing their jobs.
They just had one recently, and I've been aware of this for years. But
So this is a competition?
Yeah, it's like a competition, and you usually get 10 freakishly ugly dogs, and then the judges pick which one is the ugliest. It just happened about a week ago.
Okay.
Now, I've never really minded it too much. I watched a video about it this week, and I am now I feel strongly about it all of a sudden. And I don't like it. Now, they argue, because they have to have an argument for it, don't they? Because they have to have some kind of justification. And they argue that it's all about showing that all dogs are beautiful and even the ugly ones should be loved and win prizes and get some attention.
What kind of bullshit is that?
I think that's a hollow argument for what is essentially like a 19th century freak show.
Yeah, this is a circus sideshow event.
And
I
watched it
a freak
the other
show
day.
is not about the beauty of humanity. It's about look at these freaks.
I know, and I watched it the other day, and it made my heart feel sad watching them make a spectacle of these dogs because they believe they're ugly. And I almost wanted to punch the screen. Now I admit I'm a bit biased because there seems to be a much higher than average number of chihuahuas in these competitions.
Well, that's not surprising because Chihuahuas are at the end of the spectrum of genetic freakishness of dogs. I mean, you've taken a wolf and you've turned it into Audrey.
Yeah.
You know what? Most of the time, that science experiment is going to go terribly wrong.
And
so that's
I
why
admit
they're going to be
Chihuahuas.
Chihuahuas.
I mean, even Audrey sometimes skates the line between being ridiculously cute and a little bit like funny looking. But Audrey manages to come down on the cute side every time. But so
she's a little close to that uncanny valley, though. Is that what you're saying?
I'm upset about this thing, and I just want to say, I think we should stop World's Ugliest Dog, and I do not believe this whole it's for the greater good.
No, of course not.
And I'm going to try to avoid it next year.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even know this existed. I mean, just if they did World's Ugliest Person, and the organizers were telling you it's all about the beauty of humans. It's just you're obviously full of it. It's just you're just making money off of a freak show. That's all that would be.
But anyway, so don't let me find out you're Googling it, Gray, because I'll be really upset.
I'm not Googling it right now. I'm not going to put it in the show notes.
Good. Now, the next item in the show notes is Glastonbury Music Festival.
And so you were at the Glastonbury Music Festival.
I was. Nothing tells me how little you know about Glastonbury more than how you spelt Glastonbury.
Did I write it in the show notes? Did I write this?
I didn't write it because I sure as heck couldn't spell it like that.
How I wrote Glastonbury, just the way it sounds.
Yeah, but you wrote berry like berry with a strawberry. Berry.
Is that not right?
No, it's Bury.
Oh, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
This is an audio format. Nobody knows if I'm saying Glastonbury with a berry or Glastonbury Brie.
Well,
with
even the way you
URI.
say Glastonbury gives it. Like, you don't say Glastonbury. It is more Glastonbury.
Okay, whatever.
I like.
I'm super into music.
I know. I did go. I went on the first Friday, but I did come back early because, well, to be honest, the lineup wasn't as good this year, and there were the other family things going on, so we wanted to get back to the hometown to be with family. So I was only there for one day. I had and one night. I had a really good time. I do enjoy going. And I imagine we will keep going each year because we like it so much. But, man, you know how there are lots of things in life that I enjoy and I kind of try and foist them on you and say, great, you should do it, you should try it just for the experience and stuff. I'm not even going to try with this one. There's just, you would hate it. You would hate it.
Yeah, I know I would hate it. I see, even you send me these pictures, or I see on Twitter you're trying to post pictures of how great it is. You're there with a little umbrella in your drink or whatever you're doing. But in the background, it looks like Calcutta. It just looks awful.
And that was in the VIP section.
Yeah, that's why I sent you a picture of some tent city, in some third world country, because like, this is what this festival looks like. It looks horrible.
There is something funny about something so posh and expensive happening in such third world conditions, though.
Yeah, so there is no universe in which I'm going to the Glastonbury festival with you. It's never going to happen.
I'm not even good.
I'm glad you like it. Yeah. I'm glad that the neurons in your brain are set up in such a way that you can derive pleasure from this event. But my brain is not structured in such a way.
The curtain is pulled back on a regular basis when you're at Glastonbury and you realise, what the heck am I doing here? Very often when you're standing at the toilet. Our human need for toileting is a big problem, isn't it?
Yeah, it's awful.
Like it is a big problem.
This was almost the civilization ending problem we get too many people together in a city, and toilet problems equals cholera equals plagues. If we didn't luck out with our medicine tech tree progressing, cities were a disaster for a long time. So you're basically creating a horrible. Glastonbury looks like it's like a tent city / 18th century plumbing situation that you're going to. Boy, I can't wait to go next year.
It has got a lot of good things though, and I would recommend it to most people, but not you. It did make me think though, seeing all these bands. If you and I were in a band, presumably with a few other people, because bands are cooler when there's 4 people. I think it's about the coolest number for a band.
Yeah, there aren't many 2-man bands, are there?
There are, but
can you have a 2-man?
You
band?
can, yeah, but
you need someone on the drums. There's 2 guitars.
If we were in a band with a few other friends, I did wonder what our positions in the band would be. What do you think? If you were in a band, what would you be?
What do you mean?
What instrument would you play? Like, what would your position? Would you be the lead singer, the guitarist, the drummer? Like, what would you be?
Could I be the accountant?
I guess. You could. You could be that. You'd enjoy putting together the set list every night, because that's a list.
Yeah. I could do more of the admin side.
If you had to be on the stage, though, come on. Because I've been thinking about it, and I initially had you down as drummer, because you're kind of down the back and hidden away a bit and stuff. But I've now decided I think you'd be on bass guitar.
Bass guitar?
Yeah, because the guy on bass guitar is normally off to the side. He doesn't talk or sing much. He always seems to look the most serious and stern when they're performing. So when we start a band, I'm putting you down for bass guitar.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I know nothing about music, so I bass guitar sounds good.
Yeah. You kind of look a bit like a bass guitarist too.
Is that the deep left field of being on a band?
It kind of is, guitar? Yeah. It kind of is. You can sort of be hidden away and get less attention. Oh, my doorbell just went. I better check. Okay. I better check what that is in case my wife's locked out of the house. Do you mind?
Okay. You go right ahead.
You just sit there and think about. You think about what I'm going to be in the band while I go.
Okay, right. He's going to go. Okay, Brady's gone. Internet. This is me talking to you again. Hello. I think there's no doubt about this. My prediction, Brady obviously should be the drummer. That's what it seems like Brady should be. However, I think in Brady's own mind, he might imagine himself as the lead singer. So that's my prediction here. Brady should be the drummer. That's where I would put him. But he might think that he's the lead singer. So we're gonna wait for Brady to get back and see what happens.
Sorry, Gray.
Oh no.
There's a great big storm rolling in. I can see it coming in over the sea, and that was an Amazon delivery, but my wife was outside bringing stuff in because it was going to rain, so she didn't hear the door. And then Audrey chased me up the stairs and wants to come in, but I'm not letting her in.
You're not letting her in? She's very cute, though.
She is, but my wife will think she's gone missing and have to come looking for her, so I let her stay.
Do you need a minute to catch your breath? Because you are at the top floor of 7 floors.
Oh, yeah.
You don't have an elevator in your house.
All right. I think I'm all right now.
Yeah.
Where were we?
Okay. I was talking to the people while you were gone.
What did you tell them?
I'm not telling you what I told them.
Okay.
What I want to know from you is, where do you see yourself in a band?
Well, are we going to ignore how bad my singing voice is? Because I can't sing for peanuts.
I mean, I can't play bass guitar. So we're going to presume that you have the talent to be in any of the positions.
Okay.
Where do you see yourself?
I have decided not to be the lead singer.
Really?
Yeah, but I am going to be like the showy lead guitarist, because I do like a bit of attention sometimes, but I don't like being the absolute center of attention. I like being a little bit to the side. So I'd be like, I would sometimes do a bit of accompanying singing, and I'd be like the main guitarist. So, but not. So think of me a bit more like The Edge rather than Bono.
It means nothing to me.
All right.
So you want to be lead guitarist.
Lead guitar.
Lead guitarist sings as well? I didn't know that.
It depends on the band. Sometimes I can sing a bit too. So I'll occasionally sing. Maybe there'll be 1 or 2 big hits where I'm the singer. Like everyone's like, oh, I love this song. This is the one that Brady sings. Yeah, but I wouldn't be the lead singer because I couldn't handle that much attention.
Interesting. Interesting. I would put you on drums.
Yeah?
You seem like a man who would enjoy the drums.
I would enjoy the violence of the drums, the caveman banging. Yeah.
It's like brushing your teeth.
Yeah. You're a bit too much down the back, though. Although when I do go to gigs, I quite often watch the drummer and think, wow, they're so coordinated.
The drummer seems like they're doing the most. They seem the most active.
Good exercise, too. Be good for our weight loss thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Would it?
So, Gray, I have... You know how I want to tell you about this invention of mine, which is called the brag humble?
Oh, God, not this again. Okay.
I have a brag humble. But not only this, let's forget the brag humble side of it. I cannot wait to tell you this, because this is going to be a very special moment for my good friend, Derek from Veritasium. This is
who I was just thinking would be the lead singer in the
Oh, yeah.
But
yeah. Or he and Destin would be slugging it out over that. So... This is a great moment for Derek. This is his karma moment. So enjoy this, Derek. But this is also an example of what I think is a brag humble.
Okay.
My friend, Matt Parker, who you know as well, a friend of yours as well, you've met numerous times. He's in number file videos, and he calls himself a stand-up mathematician. He sort of mixes comedy and mathematics. Last year, he brought out a book. Very good book. It's called Things to Make and Do in the Fourth Dimension. I recommend. Go and buy it. Came out in hardback. It's just come out in paperback. So he phoned me up the other day and said, Brady, I've got some news for you. In the new edition, in the paperback edition, I've put you in the acknowledgements. That's, because I've helped promote his book and I've helped promote him and he's in lots of videos and stuff. And I'm like, wow, I don't think I've ever been in the acknowledgements of a book before. I was a bit touched. I'm not gonna lie, Gray. I was a bit pleased with myself.
I bet you were.
So I said, oh, thanks, Matt. You didn't have to do that. That's really good. Thank you very much. And then he said, unfortunately, some copy editor took it upon themselves and changed your name from Brady to Bradley. and it's been printed however many thousand times in the new paperback edition of Matt's book. So I went from not being in the acknowledgements of the hardback to being in the misspelled acknowledgements. So I've got it here in front of me. Matt has signed. Matt sent me a couple of copies and he signed it. He said, "Do not look at page 453 from Matt." So I went straight to page 453. And here it is in black and white. Thanks also to Bradley Harron of Numberphile fame. Obviously not much fame if no one knows how to spell my name. Bradley Harron of Numberphile fame, who's filmed me for YouTube with dominoes, pies, mile-long pieces of paper, and the number 0. Now I think that is a brag humble, because the whole point of saying, "Hey, I'm in the acknowledgements of a book," is to then say, "And no one knows who I am and they got my name wrong." And I think Derek should also have a nice little smile to himself after all.
I mean, this is just karmic justice.
Yes.
For your constant making up of his names. And I think it was the last podcast you did it. You had one that was so distorted I didn't even notice. So I didn't.
Duke from
I
the
couldn't
Vatican.
do my usual. Yes, I thought you were making some just bizarre reference to other people. I didn't realize that was supposed to be Derek of Veritasium. So that's why I didn't have my usual whisper of trying to make sure that people who don't know who the heck you're talking about actually get to hear the correct thing. There you go. That one was far off the reservation. So I think this is just you getting some karmic payback.
I got my comeuppance.
What you did.
I got my comeuppance. Yeah.
I still don't get how this is brag humbling. This seems to me just like a humble brag. They're like, "Oh, I'm in the acknowledgements of a book, but they spelled my name wrong." That's what this just sounds
I don't
like to
think.
me.
I think being so unknown that the copy editor thought, "Well, that can't be anyone's name." They've just changed it to what they think the name must be.
You were just imagining what a copy editor is thinking. There's no evidence for this. There's no reason to assume it's anything other than just a typo.
Whatever it is,
or an
whatever it
autocorrect.
is, they wouldn't get it wrong if he was thinking Tom Hanks.
But you're presuming that it could have been Tim Hanks if autocorrect does something weird. If someone's typing it in and they just don't notice it. I think you're just humble bragging here.
Okay.
You're just humble bragging.
Well, you're wrong.
And you're trying to make this bizarre brag humble that I still can't even understand in my mind.
No, I think
you're trying to make this
telling
happen.
of the story is, hey, look at me, get me. I'm in the acknowledgements of a book. I'm awesome. And then they got my name wrong.
This is just a shaggy dog humble brag. That's all this is.
Don't agree.
That's all this is.
Well, no, because humble brag is all about intent, and I know my intent. Unless you're accusing me of having different intent. Is that what you're doing? Are you accusing me? Are you accusing me, Gray? Do you think I'm telling the story because I want to brag about being the acknowledgement of this book, or because I think it's funny that my name was wrong?
I think you're telling the story because you think it's funny that your name
All
is
right,
wrong.
thank you very much. I rest my case.
No
more questions, Your Honour. No more questions, Your Honour. No more questions.
Okay.
Pow,
pow, pow. Next.
But don't worry, I'm going to pull this from the fire. I do see opportunity here because there can be because they will correct this in the next edition, at which point it will become a humble brag. But also, that means, like that upside down plane on the stamp, this is a super collector's edition. But I'm going to go one better because I've got 3 copies here signed by Matt, and I'm going to sign these 3 copies from Bradley Harron. How's that for limited edition?
I think your getting things done auction has gone to your head.
This could be the only chance anyone ever has to own this book. Dedicated. Well, I'm saying it's dedicated to me now rather than me being listed at the end of the acknowledgements.
This is just how conversations go. Everything gets exaggerated. And it's soon going to be that Matt Parker wrote a book about you through which the entire thing you were misnamed as Bradley. That's the end result here. That the book is actually called Bradley Harron, A Life of Awesomeness.
Yep. Anyway.
Yeah. That's in 3 years when you tell this story again, that's what it's going to be.
All right. All I'm saying, just to make just to make Gray feel bad, all I'm saying is keep a lookout for the signed Bradley Harron edition, which will be sold to raise money for Cransley Hospice.
Hello, Internet. It's your old pal Gray, trying to make your life better with Backblaze.com, the online backup solution that you need installed on your computer. Backblaze keeps buying ads, which means that some of you haven't done it yet. You really need to go to backblaze.com/hellointernet and to sign up for their online backup service. It'll protect all of the files on your computer automatically. You don't have to do anything. There's nothing to manage. You go to Backblaze, you run their little program, and it just protects all of your files. Protects them from what? Oh, so many things. We were just discussing asteroids on the show a moment ago. Now, of course, if it's a civilization-ending kind of asteroid, well, Backblaze can't help you there. We don't have off-planet backup yet, although I'm sure Yev and the guys over there are working on it. But you know asteroids can be much smaller than that. You can have a very small asteroid just destroy your house while you're out shopping. If such a thing were to occur, of course, it would be upsetting, but it would be way less upsetting if you knew that all of your digital memories were saved, all of your digital work was preserved by Backblaze. These guys know what they're doing. Backblaze has over 150 petabytes of people's data that they protect, and they have restored over 10 billion files for their customers. It's for Mac, it's for Windows, they have iPhone apps, they have Android apps, everything that you could ask for. Now, why do they have those iPhone and Android apps? Because when you have all of your files backed up in the cloud, that means you can also access them from anywhere. If you need to just look at a file when you're away from your computer and it isn't in any of your normal systems, if it's on your computer, it's on Backblaze as well. And this is a feature I have definitely used. I have a big external hard drive at home that I put some stuff on. Backblaze backs that up, but that's not in Dropbox. It's not in any of my other cloud services, but it is in Backblaze. And so there have been times when I have been on vacation or otherwise away from my computer, and I realize, oh, I do need a file that's on that external drive, and I can get access to it immediately. So with Backblaze, there are no add-ons, no gimmicks, no additional charges. It's just $5 per month per computer for unlimited, unthrottled backup. Sign up right now. Get a risk-free, no credit card required trial by going to backblaze.com/hellointernet. Backblaze. Protect your digital data from massive downside events.
There's so much stuff been going on.
Yeah, so here's the thing. We're 2 hours into this now.
Oh, wow.
We're 2 hours into this. This podcast is already going to be late. And the longer it is, the later it's going to be.
I'm just looking through the other things here for things that might be time sensitive. The only other one that I think is time sensitive, perhaps, is Plane Crash Corner.
No, that's what you pick out? Okay, all right. That wasn't where I thought you were going.
No,
Why don't you tell me about your Plane Crash Corner?
There's two other time sensitive ones. You're right. We have to do two. I'm sorry, Gray. You're right. We have to do two. Let's quickly do Plane Crash Corner. Let's do it really quickly because I haven't got much to say about this.
And I almost never have anything to say about it, so we can get through it very fast.
Lots and lots of people have been in touch with us to tell us that Gray's nemesis, Roman Mars.
No, let's not turn this into a thing.
No, I know.
Let's not turn this into a thing.
I'm joking. You're a big fan of his. You're a big fan of his work. Yeah, and there was the funny little thing with the flag that happened a while back. He's brought out another episode of 99% Invisible. And this time, he's managed to combine two of our interests, one being plane crashes for me, and the other one being automation for you. And it's a good listen. I believe we've both listened to it. Yep. It's a good episode to listen to. Gray will link to it in the notes. I do want to point something out, though, because last time when this TED Talk came out from Roman all about flags, it was like a bit unlucky for you because you were planning to do a video on flags and that kind of scuppered your plans a little bit. And we joked about it.
Right.
And it's all good. It's all good. But because of that, everyone now thinks because this podcast came out and he talks about plane crashes and automation, it's like, oh, he's done it again. But like, how could he hasn't done it again? I mean, it's not like we've been talking about plane crashes for far longer than you certainly want to. And you've done
even just today.
And you've done your big seminal automation video that got 100 billion views. So it's not like we've been scooped or anything. He's just done a good podcast on some interesting topics and done a good job and made a nice thing to listen to, and go and listen to it. But it's not like every time someone does a podcast or a video about something that we're interested in, it means like we've been scooped or it's bad news for us. That flag thing was a little stroke of bad luck a while ago. But, like we say, no one owns the facts, and he made a nice podcast about a plane crash that happened quite a long time ago. Did you listen to it? Did you have come away with any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I listened to it. I thought it was a very good episode. And if you haven't listened to 99% Invisible, I think this is a good place to start. It really drew me in. And yes, he's talking about the intersection of why do plane crashes happen and how much are humans reliant on automation.
Yeah.
And my general opinion on that is not reliant enough. But he puts together a very good story about the kinds of problems that can happen. What I would describe it as during a transition phase.
Yeah.
Where airplane travel is more automated than it used to be, but it's not completely automated. And what happens to pilots in that phase when it was just very interesting talking about how little time behind the steering wheel pilots actually have now.
Yeah.
That even pilots who have been working for a long time, if you go back through the logs and say, how long were they flying the plane for? It's a terrifyingly short number, even for pilots who've been around for a while. I didn't see very much of people trying to kick up a fuss. Mostly, I just thought this was a perfect episode of the intersection of our two interests. But I shouldn't have listened to it because I hate to listen to stuff about planes crashing, especially because I'm going to be getting on a plane in a couple of weeks and flying across the Atlantic again. And so, of course, I'll be thinking about this that whole time. Great. But despite my best interests in not listening to this stuff, it really drew me in right away. So I will highly recommend that people give it a listen, unless they're on an airplane right now. Don't give it a listen if you're on an airplane.
I'm not going to recommend it quite so heartily. Because if you are a plane crash enthusiast, like me, this felt like treading over old territory. And in fact, this is
old hat.
This is pretty much every single episode of Air Crash Investigation. It's like this. It's like, the pilots did the wrong thing and then the plane crashed. So I wouldn't make it my introductory podcast to 99% Invisible. There are others I like more. But like any one of his podcasts, it is really well done. And if you're just have a casual interest in plane crashes, then you will like it very much. And it was interesting. The automation part was quite interesting because it almost felt like it was building to this kind of anti-grey argument along the lines of, see, if you get too reliant on automation, when the poo hits the fan, you've got no idea what you're doing. And that was kind of true. That's what was said. And I found it really interesting when the guy was saying that he thinks pilots should sometimes mid-flight just knock it out of autopilot and just have a little fly for themselves just to keep their skills up. I just hope they don't do that on my flight. But then at the end, that argument is undercut, and basically they say, yes, there are going to be crashes because of this reliance on automation, but overall, it's a price worth paying because the automation makes things safer overall. So it's kind of like it built up an argument and then undercut it quite a bit.
Yeah, there are vastly fewer accidents because of that. And I haven't, it's on my listening queue. I haven't listened to the part 2, which is out now.
No, I haven't yet.
Which is supposed to be about cars. I haven't listened to it either, but I'm going to guess that that's a similar argument that you might end up with. For a while, drivers who are less experienced, but overall, I mean, the car crash numbers are always terrifying. I forget. I think it's like 40,000 people in America a year are killed in car crashes. And it's like, if you can do anything to pull that number down, it's a tremendous good. And automation will do that. But I haven't listened to that episode yet, so I don't know anything.
Anyway, 99% Visible, good podcast. This was a good episode. I would have liked a few more questions answered. Maybe it was a bit superficial for the plane crash enthusiasts among us. But for the layman like Gray, give it a go.
this is the difficulty of making things for the internet, though.
Yeah, of course.
Is this little thing is who are you making it for? Because to me, everything was novel, and to you, it's old hat. And I mean, I'm sure when you make videos, when I make videos, you get the same kind of feedback where when you have something that's popular, you end up hearing from people who just know everything about the topic.
Of course, yes.
And so, like when I've ended up hearing from a whole bunch of Confederate scholars this week. And it's like, I know that you know way more details about this, but I am going for an audience of people who know nothing about this. But you can't possibly please both of those crowds. So if you know a lot about plane crashes, maybe this is not the episode for you. But if you're like me and try to avoid everything about plane crashes, yet somehow do a podcast with a guy who always wants to talk about them, it was more interesting.
So there's a lot of other things we wanted to talk about, but we're out of time, really. But there is one more thing that seems timely, and I have to ask you about it because you seem to be you are the unofficial brand ambassador for Reddit, in my opinion.
This is not a job I want.
No,
this is not a job I want. I do not want to be Reddit's brand ambassador.
So there've been these problems with Reddit, and my way into it was actually quite personal because. A guy called Ed Frankel, who's another number file contributor, he's a mathematician based at Berkeley who I make films with, was doing one of these Reddit Ask Me Anythings. And I noticed he was doing it, and I wanted to send more traffic towards it. Not that Reddit needs my help building traffic, but so I went on Twitter and Reddit myself and said, hey everyone, my mate Ed is doing an Ask Me Anything. If you want to go and catch him, go to it. And about 5 minutes after I tweeted it, I went back to see what was happening. And it had been shut down. And I thought, poor old Ed, he's had some glitch on his particular AMA. Isn't that unlucky? And then over the next few hours, I began to realise this was a small part of something much, much bigger. And I haven't completely got my head around what's going on. But there have been problems at Reddit this week, and now it's been in the mainstream press and everything. Do you want to explain? Can you give me the executive summary of what's going down?
Yeah, so you mentioned you wanted to talk about this, and I was reluctant to talk about it, primarily because it's a complicated thing to explain, and it's also really inside baseball stuff. So I'm not quite sure how to explain it without going into a whole bunch of details that people who don't know anything about Reddit won't care at all about.
Should I explain it as maybe it would help you to hear me tell you what I think happened.
Let's do that. Yeah, that's a good starting point. Point. What's your perception?
I'll tell you my perception of what happened. My perception of what happened is there's this woman who works for Reddit as like a paid employee of Reddit. And her name is Victoria. And she organises lots of things and is involved with various parts of Reddit. And one of her jobs also is running the Ask Me Anything section, where quite often famous people come on and answer questions from Reddit users. Now, she was suddenly and abruptly fired or lost her job at Reddit. The reason for this is unclear. Now many of the volunteers of Reddit who really keep it all going, these moderators who are so important to Reddit, but are not employees of Reddit, they're just kind of volunteers that help it run smoothly, were very displeased about this woman losing her job and how it was handled. They thought it was unfair. And as their way of protesting, they've basically crippled sections of the website by setting things to private, making them inaccessible, and they've basically shut down bits of Reddit out of protest. And as a result, normal users like me, who aren't really moderators or anything, a lot of the sections we like using are now hamstrung as this battle goes on between the volunteer moderators who are sticking up for this woman called Victoria and the actual business people who run Reddit who took away this woman's job for whatever reason. That's what I think happened.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a fair description of what has occurred. But even that to me is a bit specific. Right. So I think maybe here's the way I would try to describe this in the most general terms about what's going on at Reddit. Okay. Is I want to say about a year ago there was a change in leadership at Reddit. The people who are running Reddit, the company.
Did ownership
And,
change, Gray, or was it just new people were employed to be the boss?
There's a new CEO and a couple of high level people were brought on board.
Okay.
Is the way to put
Okay.
it. And since that time, there have been a lot of things that some portion of the people who use Reddit don't like.
Yeah.
And as Reddit has gotten popular, there are other kinds of problems with the site that they don't seem to be addressing. And what I would say has happened with Reddit in just the past few days is a bit like a riot in that the people running Reddit have what I would describe as high negative numbers. That the vast majority of people who visit Reddit don't know anything about anything, how the sites run, right? They're just going to see funny cat pictures. But insiders have a very negative reaction to the leadership of Reddit. So if you imagine a graph, there's like a spike at the left-hand side for negative numbers, and the vast majority of people are neutral.
Yeah.
And
But when you say leadership, you're defining the people, the money people leading it, not the people who are like these informal leaders as like moderators. And
yeah, I mean people who are employed or the owners of the company.
Yeah.
I'm using leadership in a slightly broad term here for a reason. But I'm talking about like people who own the company or run the company. That's what I mean. Again, it's the vast majority of users don't really care. They don't really know anything that's going on.
Like I don't care when bus drivers go on strike. Like I don't really care about bus drivers' salaries, but suddenly I get affected when all the bus drivers stop driving the buses.
Yeah. And so there are just a lot of problems that have been building up among a small group of people. This is particularly the moderators, the people who are running sections on Reddit but are not employed by Reddit, have felt that Reddit has not helped them with the tools that they need as the site has gotten popular, that it has been neglected.
Yeah.
And so this Victoria person this is a case where I fall into it as I am only dimly aware of her, but it also falls into the category of Victoria is a bit like the opposite of the Reddit administration in that the vast majority of users don't know who she is, but the people who do know who she is, she has a big spike in her positives.
Right.
So her curve, her likability curve is the exact reverse of the leadership. And so this is like a riot situation where there's a small group of people or a minority of people who intensely dislike the leadership, and then the leadership has gotten rid of someone who has very high positive numbers. And this is like a collision that has occurred that has made a group of the users very angry, and then has caused this little bit of a like I said, it's a bit like it feels like a riot. Like it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the particulars of what happened. Anything could kick it off, but like stuff has just been building up. And yes, I think the details of the way this situation have been handled have been very ham-fisted, have been very poorly done. But it just felt like there was a fire that's been waiting to happen.
Yeah.
And this firing of Victoria happened to be the thing. But it was just building up and building up. So I think that's the highest level way to describe what is occurring.
How do you see the future of things? How do you see is this just going to blow over, or do you see change happening as a result? Like how fierce do you think this fire is?
It's really interesting. I don't know how to judge this. And one thing that is a number that you can put on it is that there is a petition on change.org asking for the CEO of Reddit to step down that has 100,000 signatures on it, which is not an insignificant number of people. And I would say that the CEO has definitely demonstrated a lack of understanding for internet culture. Might be the way to put it.
Yeah.
It's a bit like, your grandma's trying to do something in Hotmail, and it's just like everything that they're doing indicates to you that they don't know what they're doing. There have been a few events like this, so that aggravates people. Like, you're running the biggest discussion website on the internet.
Yeah.
You should really know this.
Maybe he should put out a statement on his MySpace.
I don't know where the future of this is going. I feel partly that this is the recurring problem that we see on the internet, that in many ways are like the things that we have talked about with YouTube, that the internet has a funny way of trending toward monopolies
Yeah.
of the best video site becomes the only video site, and the best comments discussion board becomes, it's not the only discussion board, but it's like YouTube versus Vimeo. There are other discussion sites out there that people use, but there's no doubt about it that Reddit is the biggest. And I use it because unlike YouTube, which I think has many technical problems, I think the discussion algorithms they use are by far and away the best. That's why I still use them for all of my discussions. But I think this is the same kind of problem of we have everything is now in one basket. And so if there's a leadership change or if things aren't going very well, people get really frustrated really fast because there aren't very many options. And I don't know if there's a way to do like an open source distributed commenting system in the same way that email is an open platform or RSS is an open platform, the way we host our podcasts. I don't know if that's a kind of thing that can happen with comments, but because I just don't, because here's the thing. People have talked about before how before Reddit, Dig was one of the bigger sites, and then Dig went through problems and everybody left Dig for Reddit.
Yep.
And now, is Reddit going through the same thing? Well, if everybody leaves Reddit for something else, I mean, probably the largest contender right now is a site called Vote. If people leave Reddit for Vote, I don't see how this is necessarily going to be any different. We've just kicked the can down the road of what happens then when some other website then becomes the monopoly as time goes on. And then it's a difficult thing. And I don't know what's going to happen to Reddit in the future. I think that Reddit is great in the comments, but the way things have been handled, I do not think have been handled very well. And there's this the thing I've mentioned a couple of times is there's this problem on the internet called a Streisand effect. Are you aware of the Streisand effect?
I am, yeah.
For the listeners, Streisand effect comes from Barbra Streisand, and it's a reference to when you try to cover up something on the internet, you often make it worse. And the example here is that Barbra Streisand many years ago was unhappy that there were some photos of her house on the internet. And her very actions to try to get rid of those photos is what caused those photos to become popular and everybody to see pictures of her house and to eventually have an effect named after her. It's like the exact opposite of what anybody would ever want. And there are a few things that Reddit has done which I think are Streisand effecty in the past couple months, where there are things about the site that they don't like and then they try to change them, and I think it just ends up making those things more popular or more intense.
Yeah.
Or it ends up making those things have higher visibility.
Sorry, are you talking about these like abusive sections of Reddit that they tried to sort of silence or get rid of, and now everyone started looking at them more? Or
yeah, again, the details of those things are very hard to even talk about without making everybody angry, or I also think without making the situation worse. But that is definitely a case where they tried to. I don't know. There was something on my mind which is kind of related to this that I don't know how to articulate this, but it's something on my mind of how there are bad things that happen in the world, or there are bad things that exist in the world. But sometimes I don't know how to talk about them in a way that I don't think makes the situation worse.
yeah,
I think there are very much. I mean, again, just talking about in a very broad context, when people try to do something like banning an idea, I think all that happens very often is you end up consolidating and strengthening the group of people who believe in that idea.
yeah,
Right? You've ended up making them feel now like they are warriors against injustice. And so when I think about stuff on the internet, and one of the reasons why I always liked Reddit is the internet is kind of a horrible place, but it's a horrible place because people are horrible. And I much prefer to have a situation where all the ideas are on the table and everybody can see what those ideas are, even if they're not good ones. But I think what can happen sometimes is when you try to say, oh, we want to remove some of these ideas from the table, I think it just makes the whole situation worse. I think it makes people angry, and it makes people who are trying to do good in the world less aware of what the nature of people's minds are. If you can't see what all the ideas on the table are, there are some that are hidden underneath the table. I don't know. I'm trying to talk about it in very general terms, because talking about anything in particular, you end up just inflaming an argument.
I mean, I wanted to ask you about the Confederate flag on this episode, and then I thought, there's no way Gray's going to talk about that.
No, but see, this is the very thing. Like we discussed that Confederate flag video, my most recent video before it went up, because I was having this same feeling, and I talked to a bunch of people about that video, and I could see that I was getting the same kind of reaction, that people from different ends of the spectrum, they strengthen their opinion. So I'm going to give. Hold on a second. I want to see if I can pull up something here. Let me see if I can pull up something really quick, because this is a perfect example. Okay, here we go. Perfect. I found it. Oh, that's just great. Okay, so yeah, the Confederate flag stuff, I don't want to get into any of the details about this argument. I just want to talk about one thing. So when I was doing the research for the Confederate flag video, I happened to stumble upon a poll from Pew Research, the people who do all the polls in America, about people's reactions to the Confederate flag. Now, this is from 2011. So here we were talking about like positive, negative reactions to Victoria before. This is the same thing for this flag.
Yeah.
So in 2011, when shown a Confederate flag, the reaction that Americans had, 9% of Americans had a positive reaction. 30% of Americans had a negative reaction. And the rest said that they had no reaction to the Confederate flag. They didn't feel one way or the other. Okay.
Yep.
So this is several years ago. Now, we've had this whole big brouhaha over the Confederate flag recently. I would bet money that what has happened now is that almost 60% of people who had no reaction to the flag, that group is now gone, right? That there's almost no Americans who would say they have no reaction to the Confederate flag. But here's the thing. Positive reaction, that number has increased as well.
Yeah. Well, that's good. You've taken a bunch of neutrals and held a gun to their head. That's massively inappropriate. You've taken a bunch of neutrals and forced them to decide. You know, there's no room for neutrality anymore. Get in camp A or camp B, and of course both will go up.
Yeah, and when I was trying to put together that Confederate flag video, I had several people tell me this exact same thing of I don't know even how to put this, but people said, you can no longer make a video that is neutral on the Confederate flag. That if you just want to talk about where the flag came from and you don't finish that video with, and by the way, it's a horrible symbol of injustice and should be banned from people's brains for all of time, that you are implicitly endorsing horribleness. I had people tell me that. I had several people tell me basically that if you don't come out and there's no middle ground left anymore. And this is a bit like, I don't know, I felt like I was trying to get at this with my video about, like, this video will make you angry. That there are conversations that just spread. And I don't know if it's, I don't know. This is what I mean, where I think it's hard to have a conversation about a thing that doesn't make the situation worse. Like, it is undoubtable now that seeing a Confederate flag in 2015 going forward has different, much worse reactions for people than it did in 2014 and earlier. And we can know that because of this Pew poll. And it's a bit weird. Like, my parents retired down to the South, and it was just like, I would see Confederate flags around. And I always thought that was kind of weird as a Northerner. But I'm going to be really curious that when I visit my family this summer, are they all gone? I wonder. I don't know which way this is going to go. I'm sometimes hesitant to talk about some topics, but it's not because I don't feel strongly one way or the other. It's because I don't know how to have the conversation in a way that I think makes things better.
It's not your job
as
to make
opposed
things
to
better.
just.
It's not your job. You don't have to do that. I would encourage you not to make things worse, but you are allowed to be neutral.
I think that there are ways in which you can be thinking that you're making something better and you're actually making it worse. That just by talking about a thing, like it spreads memes or like it spreads ideas in a way that makes things worse than they were before. I don't know. I'm not doing a good job of explaining this, but this has been on my mind for a while.
I think this is just kind of. I think what you say is true. Everything you're saying is true, but I also think it greatly reflects your just kind of your cautious nature, and you think a lot about all the different ways things could go before you act. I'm a little bit more, hey, if someone takes that the wrong way and goes crazy, well, I wish they wouldn't, but that's not what I meant. But you do think that through quite a bit. I think it's perfectly valid to do something neutral on the topic and discuss things neutrally. I have no opinion on what's going on at Reddit. I don't really have a strong opinion on the Confederate flag thing. I'm a little bit misinformed, or uninformed, I should say, rather than misinformed. I did read today that the person who owns the General Lee car from the Dukes of Hazzard, who happens to be the golfer, a famous golfer called Bubba Watson, is planning to paint over the Confederate flag on that car with the United States flag. And I think that's a bit crazy. I mean, I don't think you should be painting, whatever you think about that flag now, I don't think you should be painting or rewriting history. But I mean, I know it's perhaps a long bow to describe the General Lee as a piece of history, but it kind of is. So I don't know. But I think it's perfectly fine to talk about it and explain the facts of a situation and not have a strong opinion on it. I have no strong opinion on it. I find it funny that the unfortunate murder of people has turned into a discussion about flag control. But that's
that's the details of the situation of which I am woefully uninformed. Yeah. I mean, as usual, like I'm living in my little news bubble, and this came across my attention when people were talking about how Apple was removing all games that have the Confederate flag. And then I was like, that's outrageous. Where did this come from? And then I'm in the weird position of always having to trace the news back to like, how did this end up? And you know, because I don't follow the news, you see this pattern really clearly of the news cycle and how things always reach their most absurd later in the week. Because something starts off in the beginning of the week, and then by the end of the week, it has reached its maximum absurdity. And then next week, the cycle starts over again with something new, and everybody forgets whatever we were talking about before. But so that's why I came across this very late in the cycle.
So for you, it started as flags being banned from computer games, and you had to track your way back to a mass shooting.
That's exactly right. Which you can see from my perspective, like, what the heck is it? Where did this come from? Right? And I know nothing about anything that has occurred. From my perspective, it's just out of the blue. Apple says Confederate flags are not allowed in video games. I like how we tried to have a general conversation and immediately ended up discussing the specifics of the Confederate flag. But yeah, to draw it back to Reddit, I guess, is what I was going to say with the Streisand effect, and where I was originally trying to go with that is that the people on Reddit have been critical of the leadership, but then the leadership has then taken down threads discussing the situation. And like, okay, that is a perfect example of a Streisand effect situation of people are criticizing you on your website. The only way to roll is to let that go, right? To let people talk about it. But I don't think there would be nearly as much anger if it wasn't for the fact that there's trying to be suppression of the discussion. And that's why I'm generally very hesitant against any kind of moves to remove ideas from the table, to say we can't discuss this here. I don't think that's that's good. Even if the ideas are awful, like that's the price that you pay for living in a free society.
I don't 100% agree with that, Gray. If someone writes a comment under one of my videos about the person in the video and says something completely outrageous and offensive, I would not be uncomfortable deleting that comment. If they want to go and make that comment somewhere else, well, okay, you know, they go and do it on your own real estate, but you're not doing it on mine. Just like if someone wants to make a billboard saying something really terrible and offensive, I can't stop them doing it, but I can stop them bolting it to the front of my house.
It's a bit different on your YouTube channel because that's something you are not running a general purpose platform for discussion.
Yeah, and ideas for them. Yeah, okay.
That is what it is. Come here to talk about anything.
Yeah.
And then that's why in the last year it's been more about come here to talk about anything except the things that we don't want you to talk about. And I think that's why it's like, but they're like, oh, but we don't want you to talk about the horrible things, like because they're horrible. We're not discussing if they're horrible, right? Where it's the ultimate thing here is like you're making a decision about what is allowed or what is not allowed to be talked about. And I'm okay with it. Like Reddit has taken down discussion forums before about stuff that was illegal. And I think like that is an acceptable boundary to have.
Yeah.
You are operating within the United States and the United States says you are not allowed to have this section of the forum. Fine. It's taken down. I don't think anybody argues with that. That's quite reasonable. But there's many more things that are in a different area. And so if stuff is illegal, I'm always okay with, well, obviously you should take that down. Like you have to take it down. But other than that, I think it's very difficult to have conversations that are bounded in some way. I just generally don't react very well to that outside the specifics of what the discussion is. But I don't know. But then I find myself in the weird situation of you're always on the side of people that you don't necessarily like. But that's what you have to do if you want ideas to be on the table. If you don't want them to be removed from the table, is you have to be able to defend the ones that you don't like, their presence, if not their content.
Okay, I'm all right with that.
We've been very wandery today.
Not for the first time. You know,
but for the last.
No, not for the last either. I tell you what, there's lots of things we didn't talk about, so we've already got the next episode already taken care of.
Great.
Yeah.
Are we finishing Reddit here?
I think we're done. I think we're done. I think we've been recording for quite a while.
We have.
Yeah.
It's been 2 hours and 42 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, in that time, it started off sunny, the weather turned stormy and rainy here, and now it looks like it's getting sunny here again. So we're actually going through like complete climate changes where I am.